Hi guys, and welcome to Quiet Voice Podcast channel. Tonight we step into a Mississippi plantation winter, where the cotton rows lie pale beneath frost. The river breathes mist, and every plank wall seems too thin for the cold pressing through it. You might imagine the Deep South as warm, green, and forgiving, but winter here has its own sharp little teeth. It hides in wet socks, smoky cabins, empty stomachs, and dawn fields where your fingers refuse to bend. How long would you last when the season itself becomes another overseer? So, before you settle into the story, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, and tell us in the comments where you're listening from and what your local time is right now. Maybe it is midnight in London, evening in Toronto, or a softer morning somewhere far from the Mississippi mud. Now, dim the lights and feel the air change around you as the plantation road stretches ahead, silvered with frost and silence. You walk beneath leafless trees while the ground hardens under your worn shoes. The Mississippi winter does not roar at first. It creeps. It slips through the canebrake, over the black fields, and beneath the loose cloth at your wrists. The great plantation house stands beyond a line of bare oaks, its windows glowing with lamplight, looking almost theatrical against the grey sky. Smoke rises from its chimneys in confident streams, as though warmth belongs there by right. Around it, the land lies flat and wide, broken by cotton stalks left standing like brittle bones. The fields remember summer, though summer does not remember you. You breathe in the smell of damp earth, old cotton burrs, and wood smoke drifting low. Somewhere a mule stamps against the cold, its harness rings clicking softly. A dog barks once, then thinks better of it. The sound seems swallowed by the mist. This is Mississippi, sometime in the years before the American Civil War, when cotton rules the economy with a soft white fist. By the middle of the 19th century, Mississippi has become one of the wealthiest cotton states in the United States. That wealth, of course, is not floating freely in the air like perfume. It rests on forced labour, stolen time, and bodies made to bend beneath seasons that never pause politely. You are not here as a visitor. You are here inside the machinery. The plantation is not a single house with pretty columns and tragic wallpaper. It is an entire world arranged for extraction. There are fields, barns, smokehouses, stables, kitchens, workshops, cabins, paths, fences, ditches, and the watchful geography of power. Every space tells you where you may stand, how long you may rest, and who may call your name without asking. In summer, the place is alive with insects and heat. In winter, it feels stripped down to its bones. The cotton fields stretch outward, dull brown and silver in the weak morning light. Frost catches on the empty bowls, making them glitter for a moment. It would be beautiful, honestly, if beauty were not being rude under the circumstances. The stalks scratch at your legs as you pass, dry and stubborn. Each one seems to whisper that harvest may be over, but work is not. Work rarely is. Winter on a plantation is not a holiday season wrapped in quilts and kindness. It is repair season, clearing season, hauling season, ditching season, wood cutting season, livestock season, and preparation season. There are fences to mend, tools to sharpen, cotton to gin, wood to split, roads to maintain, and new ground to clear. If the crop has been gathered, the plantation turns its appetite toward everything else. You feel the cold first in your hands. Your fingers ache round a wooden handle, rough with splinters and old sweat. The air is wet enough to settle inside your sleeves. It is not the clean mountain cold of postcards and brave little cabins. This is lowland cold, heavy with river damp, the kind that presses through fabric and sits against your skin like an unwanted guest. You would prefer snow, perhaps. Snow at least has manners. Here the cold comes as frost, sleet, rain, mud, and a pale sky that seems undecided all day. Mississippi winters are milder than northern ones, but that mercy can be misleading. For people with poor clothing, poor housing, little medical care, and no control over their labour, even moderate cold becomes dangerous. A temperature that sounds harmless on paper can become cruel when you cannot dry your blanket. You brush it away and another arrives. Its tone moves across the quarters, low and blunt, giving shape to the morning. You wake with others in a cramped cabin where breath has clouded the air. Ashes sleep in the hearth. The floorboards hold the night chill. Somewhere nearby, a child coughs with a dry, rasping sound that no one comments on yet. There is no gentle transition into the day. Everyone watches the cane. Is it growing well? Are the stalks thickening? Has too much rain fallen? Will the drainage hold? Will disease, flood, storm, or accident undo months of labour? You pull on clothing that still carries yesterday's smoke and dampness. Coarse cloth rubs at your shoulders and neck. Shoes, if you have them, are stiff and cold. Some enslaved people in the lower south received rough garments issued by enslavers, often once or twice a year, but the quality varied widely. Winter clothing could be thin, badly fitted, already worn, or simply insufficient for wet labour. You can almost hear that tension. The smoke hangs low and blue, caught under the damp air. It stings your eyes, but also promises warmth, so you forgive it. Across the yard, figures move in half-darkness, wrapping cloth around heads, shoulders, and hands. Nobody wastes words at this hour. Speech feels too expensive. The sky slowly lightens over the fields. There is no birdsong yet, only small sounds. A bucket handle creaks, a mule snorts, frozen weeds crack softly beneath feet. Somewhere, from the direction of the big house, comes the faint clatter of kitchen work beginning under better shelter. Even comfort has servants, and here it has many. You pass cabins lined in rows or clustered irregularly, depending on the plantation's design. Some cabins are log, some frame, some with clay chinking, some with fireplaces shared between two rooms. Historians still debate how much variation in cabin quality depended on region, wealth, management style, and the enslaved people's own efforts to improve spaces they never legally owned. What remains clear is that these homes were usually inadequate against cold, damp, and crowding. A cabin can be both refuge and trap. You know this in your bones. Inside those walls, families cook, whisper, pray, sing, argue, mend clothes, soothe children, and try to sleep. They create private life under conditions designed to deny privacy, yet the walls leak air, the roof may leak rain, the chimney may draw badly, filling the room with smoke. Warmth becomes something negotiated, not guaranteed. As you walk toward the field edge, the plantation house watches without moving. Its white columns seem colder than the weather. The house is often described as the centre of plantation life, but that depends on whose life is being discussed. For the enslaver, it is command, display, and inheritance. For you, it is distance, danger, and sometimes the smell of food you may never taste. The road is damp beneath the frost. Mud waits below the crust. One step breaks the surface, and your foot sinks with a sucking sound. Cold water touches the side of your shoe. That small shock travels upward, quiet but immediate. A wet foot in winter is not a little inconvenience. It is an announcement that the whole day may now become harder. You keep walking. Everyone keeps walking. The cotton land has a peculiar openness in winter. Without leaves and high growth, you see farther than you want to see. The horizon lies low and grey. A line of cypress marks a wetter place beyond the fields. Vultures circle lazily in the distance, looking deeply unimpressed by human ambition. The Mississippi River, not always visible from every plantation, still shapes the region like a sleeping giant nearby. Its floodplain gives the soil richness, and that richness feeds cotton. The same river also brings dampness, fog, sudden rises, and the threat of water invading everything. Plantations in the Delta and River counties live by fertility and fear at the same time. That is the joke of the place. The land gives, then takes. You reach a work area where other people gather around tools, hoes, axes, baskets, ropes, and harness pieces lie in a wagon bed. The metal parts bite cold through bare fingers. An overseer or driver calls instructions, voice flat in the morning air. The day will be measured by tasks, not comfort. Winter tasks may look less dramatic than picking cotton beneath a burning sun, but they grind steadily. You might cut dead stalks, burn brush, repair ditches, gather firewood, haul manure, tend animals, or prepare fields for spring planting. You may also help process the cotton already gathered, carrying, sorting, pressing, or moving bales toward market. The crop leaves the field, but it does not leave your back. You hear the cotton gin somewhere beyond the yard, or perhaps only imagine it. The sound is mechanical and hungry, a rasping reminder of profit. Eli Whitney's cotton gin, introduced in the 1790s, helped make short staple cotton enormously profitable across the South. That machine did not reduce slavery. Despite tidy inventions sometimes being given tidy moral stories, it helped expand cotton production, and with it the demand for enslaved labour. Machines can have very human consequences. This one certainly did. A cold gust pushes across the field, bending dry weeds along the ditch. You smell decaying leaves, mule sweat, wet leather, and distant smoke. The scents mix into something earthy and tired. The world has lost its green softness. Everything now feels exposed. You tuck your chin toward your chest. Your shoulders rise without permission. Winter reveals the plantation's hidden arithmetic. Who has a coat? Who has shoes without holes? Who sleeps nearest the fire? Who receives extra cloth? Who has family nearby to share warmth, food, and care? Who has been sold away, leaving a space colder than weather can explain? The season counts losses carefully. It does not need ink. A child stands near a cabin doorway, wrapped in fabric too large for their body. Their face is solemn with sleep. They watch adults move toward work, learning the plantation's rhythm long before they can name it. Childhood here is not absent, but it is crowded by labour, discipline, and uncertainty. Play happens in corners, between chores, beneath watchful eyes. A woman passes you carrying a bundle of kindling against her hip. Her hands are cracked from cold and washing. She smells faintly of smoke and cornmeal. She nods once, not warmly, not coldly, simply acknowledging that both of you are awake inside the same hard morning. That is sometimes the whole kindness available. From the big house comes another smell now, richer and almost insulting. Coffee, perhaps. Maybe ham warming in a pan, or biscuits baking in a kitchen built behind the main house. Plantation foodways are deeply unequal. Enslaved people may grow small garden plots, raise chickens in some cases, fish, trap, or barter, depending on local conditions and permission. Yet rations are controlled by enslavers, and hunger can sharpen in winter when garden sleep and supplies run thin. You swallow and keep your face calm. The body learns discretion. There is a quirky little detail, if one can call anything here little. Some enslaved communities read winter weather through signs in animals, smoke, clouds, and plants. A thick persimmon seed, the behaviour of squirrels, or the way smoke hugged the ground could become part forecast, part folklore, part practical science. Official weather reports were not exactly being delivered to the quarters with tea service. People observed because observation mattered. The sky was a book. You look upward now, reading what you can. Low clouds gather like wool. The air tastes metallic and your ears sting. Someone mutters that rain may come before evening. Rain in winter is worse than clear cold because it leaves the world soaked and sour. It turns paths into sludge and makes firewood hiss angrily in the hearth. The work begins. You bend toward the frozen edge of a field, gripping the tool until your palm complains. The first motions feel clumsy. Cold makes the body slow. Fingers resist, knees stiffen. Breath comes out in white bursts, vanishing quickly, as if even breath is not allowed to linger. Around you, others settle into rhythm. Wood strikes earth. Metal scrapes root. A wagon wheel creaks somewhere behind. The overseer's horse shifts, leather saddle groaning. The horse has a blanket, naturally. You notice this. And because you are human, you may enjoy a small private bitterness. The horse did not invent the system either, but still, there it stands, better dressed than several people. There is the gentle sarcasm winter allows. It keeps you warm, barely. As morning stretches, frost melts into wetness. Your sleeves darken at the cuffs. Mud clings to your shoes in heavy cakes, stealing effort from every step. The plantation seems to exhale dampness from below, as though the earth itself is breathing cold into your bones. The sun appears only as a pale coin behind cloud. It gives light without generosity. You begin to understand why survival here is not a dramatic single moment. It is not one heroic test against a blizzard. It is 100 small negotiations with discomfort, hunger, illness, surveillance, exhaustion, and fear. Winter simply removes the illusion that the plantation was ever stable or safe. The fields are quiet, but not peaceful. That difference matters. Peace requires freedom to rest, to choose shelter, to seek warmth, to say no when the body has had enough. Quiet can be imposed. Quiet can be fear. Quiet can be the sound a place makes when everyone is too tired to speak. By late morning, your hands have gone from aching to numb. This feels like an improvement, but it is really the body filing a complaint in smaller handwriting. You flex your fingers and feel them answer slowly. The handle has rubbed a raw place below your thumb. Cold makes the skin less forgiving. A driver walks the line or watching pace and posture. His presence complicates simple stories. Some drivers are enslaved men given authority over others, placed in impossible positions by plantation management. Some use that power harshly. Some try to soften demands where they can. Historians continue to examine how such roles varied, because plantation life was never one neat arrangement repeated like wallpaper. Power here has many hands. Not all are free. At midday, the smell of smoke grows stronger as fires are fed near work areas or cabins. Warmth gathers people briefly, but briefly is the key word. You may eat something plain, perhaps cornmeal cake, cold meat, or whatever has been carried from the morning. Food tastes stronger in cold air. Even a hard bite of cornbread can feel important when your stomach has been negotiating loudly since dawn. You chew slowly. There is no abundance. The plantation landscape keeps offering contrast sharp enough to cut. In one direction, the big house stores preserved fruits, cured meats, flour, sugar, and coffee. In another, people count rations and stretch meals with skill learned under pressure. The same winter sits over both places, but it does not enter them equally. That is perhaps the central fact of the season. Weather is shared, protection is not. Afternoon arrives without much ceremony. The air grows dim rather than dark, grey deepening into blue. You return to labour while your damp clothing cools again against your back. Somewhere, a crow calls from a bare branch. Its voice is rough and amused, as if it knows nobody is having an elegant day. The ground near the ditch smells of rot and clay. You lift, scrape, pull, and breathe. Repetition becomes a kind of fog. Your thoughts narrow to the next movement, the next footstep, the next chance to warm your fingers. Survival often feels less like courage and more like continuing because stopping is not permitted. The plantation depends on there. It depends on people enduring more than they should. As the day lowers, the cabins wait in the distance, their chimneys beginning to smoke again. They look fragile beneath the sky, but also deeply alive. In those rooms, people will make songs, meals, stories, jokes, remedies, plans, and prayers. Enslavers may claim ownership of bodies, labour, and time, but they never fully possess the inner weather of a community. Still, the cold follows you home. It slips beside you like a shadow. When the workday finally loosens its grip, you carry the field back with you. Mud rides on your shoes, smoke settles in your hair. Your hands pulse as warmth begins to return, which is somehow more painful than numbness. The path to the quarters is crowded with tired bodies moving through blue dusk. Above you, the first stars appear faintly. They look clean and unreachable. You pass the big house again at a distance. Lamps glow behind glass. Curtains soften the light. Inside, someone may complain about a draught, and perhaps they are sincere. Comfort does not always make people imaginative. The cold tapping at their window is the same cold that entered your bones hours ago, but they can close a door against it. You cannot close enough doors. Not yet. At the cabin, firelight trembles through cracks in the wall. Someone has coaxed flame from damp wood, and the room smells of smoke, ash, and something cooking slowly. The warmth is imperfect, uneven, smoky, and precious. You step inside and feel bodies shift to make space. The day has not ended in any grand sense. There is water to fetch, food to prepare, clothing to mend, children to settle, elders to tend, and tomorrow already waiting. But for a few breaths, you stand near the fire and let heat touch your shins. It feels almost holy, which is to say it is ordinary and desperately needed. Outside, frost gathers again on the cotton stalks. The plantation sleeps unevenly. You listen to the crackle of wood and the low murmur of voices. The winter night presses against the cabin, testing every gap. You understand now that surviving this season is not merely a matter of being strong. It is a matter of shelter, food, community, luck, knowledge, and the stubborn human will to remain present. The wind moves over the fields. The river breathes in the dark, and you, wrapped in smoke and cold, begin to learn what winter really means here. Night settles over the quarters like a damp wool blanket, heavy and not especially polite. You step into the cabin and feel warmth in patches, never everywhere at once. The fire gives its attention to the nearest faces, the nearest hands, the nearest tired feet. Beyond that small orange circle, the walls remain cold to the touch. Air slides through cracks between logs and boards, thin as a whisper, sharp as a needle. The room smells of smoke, cornmeal, damp cloth, and human closeness. It is not unpleasant exactly. It is survival. A cabin like this may hold a family, or more than one family, depending on the plantation's habits. Space is measured not by comfort, but by what can be endured. A pallet near the wall, a rough bedstead, a chest if someone is fortunate, pegs for clothing, a few cooking things, maybe a gourd dipper, a tin cup, a skillet blackened by long use. The floor creaks beneath your weight. Cold lives under the boards. You lower yourself near the hearth, stretching your hands toward the flames. Heat prickles through your fingers with a pain that feels almost personal. The skin across your knuckles is split in narrow lines. Ash sticks to the damp edges of your sleeves. Someone shifts aside, granting you a little more room without speaking. Outside, wind rubs against the cabin walls. Inside, every sound is intimate. A child turns in sleep and murmurs. A woman stirs a pot slowly, scraping the bottom with careful patience. An older man coughs twice, then clears his throat as if embarrassed by his own lungs. The chimney draws poorly tonight, so smoke gathers near the rafters before finding its way upward. Your eyes sting, and still you lean closer to the fire. Warmth always has conditions here. That is one of winter's lessons. The walls are built to contain bodies, not protect them well. Some cabins on plantations were made from logs with clay or moss packed between gaps. Others used rough planks that warped with weather. A few are sturdier, especially on wealthy estates. But sturdy is a generous word when cold rain finds the roof seam. Enslaved people often repaired these spaces themselves when materials were available. Historians still argue whether some enslavers improved housing from concern, from calculation, or simply to preserve labour value. The motive matters. Although the smoke in your eyes may not care much, better walls could mean fewer illnesses and stronger workers. They could also mean a slightly less miserable night for people who deserved far more than calculation. The fire snaps softly. Sparks rise and vanish. A blanket is passed across shoulders, thin from use and smelling faintly of smoke. You pull it close and feel the fabric scratch your neck. It is not enough, but it is something. In this world, something often has to behave like plenty. The cabin teaches the body to lower its expectations with astonishing speed. You hear rain begin before you see it. A soft tapping starts on the roof, scattered at first, then steadier. The room grows quieter as everyone notices. Rain in winter means damp clothes tomorrow, damp paths, damp firewood, damp bedding, damp everything. Even the word seems to sag. A drop slips through a roof gap and lands near the hearth with a small dark mark. Someone places a cup beneath it. No one looks surprised. The night outside deepens into blackness. Without lamps enough for easy light, the fire becomes the centre of the room and the clock of the evening. Flames shrink, then flare when fed. Faces emerge and fade. Shadows climb the walls in crooked shapes. It is easy to understand how stories find a home here. Yet this is not a charming rustic scene. It is too cold for charm. You sit with knees drawn close, listening to the cabin breathe. Every gap in the wall makes a tiny voice. A thread of wind touches your ear, then your wrist, then the back of your neck. You tuck yourself smaller. Nearby, 2 children lie under one covering, their feet tucked together for warmth. An adult reaches down to pull the cloth over their shoulders. The gesture is quiet. It says everything. Plantation owners sometimes issued blankets as part of yearly allowances, but those allowances varied by place and person. A single blanket might be expected to last through rough seasons, smoke, fleas, dampness, and daily use. Extra coverings could come from skill, trade, family effort, or rare generosity. A patchwork of survival formed from scraps, old garments, and whatever hands could make useful. You touch the blanket edge and feel a stitched repair. Each stitch is a small argument against cold. The cabin's hearth is both kitchen and heater, which sounds efficient until you're coughing in smoke. Fireplaces could lose heat quickly, especially when wind pulled warmth up the chimney. Damp wood smoulders more than burns, filling the room with a sour smell. Still, fire is the only shield against the night's damp mouth. A woman lifts a lid from the pot. Steam rises, fragrant and brief. The smell of cooked cornmeal, a little fat, and perhaps greens fills the room. Your stomach tightens with interest. Food at night is not only nourishment, it is ritual, comfort, and proof that the day has been survived. Bowls are filled carefully. Portions are noticed without anyone making a speech about fairness. You take what is handed to you. The bowl warms your palms. The food is plain, but heat turns plain food into mercy. You eat slowly, hearing the scrape of spoons and the rain tapping overhead. No one has enough privacy to pretend hunger is graceful. Yet there is dignity in the way people share space, pass things, and leave room for the weakest. Small systems of care live inside this crowded room. Outside, the plantation sleeps in layers. The big house has deeper beds, thicker quilts, glass windows, and fires set in proper rooms. In the quarters, warmth depends on gathering close and tending embers carefully. A child who kicks off a covering must be covered again. An elder whose feet stay cold needs a warmer place. Everyone becomes part of the night's management. You begin to understand the labour of sleeping. It is real labour. The cold requires planning even while bodies long for rest. Someone must bank the fire so embers last. Someone must decide where damp shoes can sit without burning or freezing. Someone must hang wet cloth near enough to dry, but far enough not to catch. Someone must wake if the roof leaks harder. Sleep comes with assignments. The wind rises and the cabin answers with creaks. A loose shutter knocks softly outside. That sound repeats until it becomes part of your pulse. Knock, Pause. Knock. Pause. The rain slips down the walls. Clay chinking darkens where moisture enters. The air thickens with wet smoke, making each breath feel worked over before it reaches you. Your throat roughens. There is a strange little trick some people use in cabins like this. Hot stones or heated bricks, when available, can be wrapped in cloth and placed near feet before sleep. It is not a plantation luxury. Not exactly. It is a practical little rebellion against cold toes. The stones lose heat too soon, naturally, because winter enjoys sarcasm as much as anyone. Still, warm feet matter, very much. Someone near the hearth turns a brick with a stick, testing whether it has warmed enough. The smell of heated clay mixes with ash. A child watches with enormous seriousness, as though this is advanced science. In a way, it is. Survival has laboratories that never receive marble plaques. The fire lowers again. Wood must be saved. That is another quiet cruelty. You need more flame, but wood cutting costs labour, and good dry wood may be limited. Damp wood smokes. Green wood fights back. Every generous blaze tonight may mean less for another night. Even warmth is rationed by effort and access. The room grows darker as flames settle. Voices soften. Someone begins humming. Very low. Not performance. More like a thread laid across the room. The tune moves around the hearth, barely above the rain. It steadies breathing. It gives the children a shape to sleep inside. Music in enslaved communities carries grief, memory, faith, coded feeling, and sometimes instruction. Tonight, it also covers the sound of the wind. You lean against the wall, then pull away quickly. The boards are icy. A better place to rest is near other bodies, but every place is already full. You learn the map of warmth by instinct. Near the hearth, too smoky. Near the wall, too cold. Near the door, drafty. Between sleepers, warmer but cramped. Comfort becomes a puzzle with missing pieces. Your legs ache from the day's work. Your back carries a dull, low soreness. The cabin floor seems determined to introduce itself to every bone. You shift once, then again, then try to stop moving because every movement disturbs someone else. The discipline of stillness is learned here, one uncomfortable night at a time. Rain becomes heavier. The roof begins another drip. A bowl is moved. A sleeping child is nudged away from the wet patch. The person doing it barely opens their eyes. Habit performs what rest cannot. The cabin is not simply endured, it is constantly operated, adjusted, defended, and repaired while people are exhausted. In a corner, someone whispers about the weather. They mention the moon being hidden, the damp wind, the smell of the river. Forecasting is communal and practical. Whether the rain freezes matters, whether the paths flood matters, whether tomorrow's firewood stays usable matters. A mistake can mean sickness, lost time, or punishment for slower work. The air tastes of ash. Your eyelids grow heavy. Still, sleep resists. The cold keeps touching whichever part of you escapes the blanket. A toe, an elbow, your cheek. You turn toward the warmth of another person's shoulder, careful not to wake them. The nearness would feel crowded in another life. Here it becomes shelter. That shelter is human and not architectural. The difference is important. A plantation cabin may be described in records as property, with measurements, costs, and repair notes. But those records rarely capture the nighttime choreography inside. They do not describe the way someone gives up the warmest spot for a feverish child. They do not record how a lullaby changes when the wind grows louder. They do not measure the courage of sleeping through another leak. The fire collapses inward with a soft sigh. A red glow remains. You watch embers pulse like small hearts under ash. The room settles around them. A mouse scratches somewhere near the wall, bold in the cold, clearly convinced rent is not its problem. Someone mutters at the sound but does not rise. Even annoyance is tired tonight. Your blanket slips, and the cold rushes in at once. You pull it back quickly. The cabin teaches that warmth is never abstract. It is felt in the first inch under a cover, the cup held between hands, the shared breath under a quilt, the hot brick near numb feet. It is also felt in what is missing, a pane of glass, a dry roof, a second blanket, the right to sleep until rested. The rain finally thins near midnight. You know this by sound alone. The hard tapping softens into a scattered whisper. Drips continue from roof edges. The wind turns colder as the clouds loosen. That is the next trick. Clear skies can draw warmth away faster, leaving frost to gather where rain had been. Morning may shine beautifully on a world made slick and hard. Your body curls without your permission. This is the old mammal wisdom. You make yourself smaller, conserving heat. The floor presses against your hip. Smoke clings to your hair. Someone's breathing near you becomes slow and even. A child's fingers rest against your sleeve. The cabin, for all its failures, holds a fragile circle of life against the winter night. There is no romance in the hardship. There is beauty in the endurance. That difference matters too. Beyond the quarters, fields lie dark and wet under the sky. Cotton stalks stand in rows like quiet witnesses. The big house lamps go out one by one, but the quarters do not surrender so easily. Embers remain guarded. Blankets are pulled closer. Bodies shift toward warmth. The night continues its slow test. You drift near sleep, then rise again at the sound of coughing. The older man by the hearth coughs into a cloth, shoulders shaking. Someone wakes enough to ask after him in a whisper. He answers that he is fine, which may be true, or may be the kind of truth people use when there is no remedy available. The room accepts the answer gently. Illness begins quietly in winter rooms. So does care. A hand reaches to stir the embers. The brief glow lights faces in copper and shadow. You see fatigue, worry, patience, and something harder to name. Not hope exactly, because hope can sound too bright for this hour. Maybe persistence. Maybe love with its sleeves rolled up. The fire is banked again. The room darkens. At last, your thoughts loosen. The sounds blur together. Breath, drip, ember, wind, mouse, rainwater sliding from the roof. The cold remains, but the body makes a small treaty with it. Not peace, never peace, only a temporary agreement that sleep may pass through. You close your eyes beneath the smoky rafters. The cabin holds its breath, and while winter presses its pale hands against the walls, you slip into a shallow rest, warmed by bodies, guarded by embers, and surrounded by the quiet labour of those who refuse to let the night take everything. Morning comes with the smell of cornmeal, smoke, and hunger pretending to be patient. You wake to a grey light pressed thinly against the cabin wall. The fire has sunk low, and the room carries that sour chill left by spent ashes. Your stomach feels hollow before your feet touch the floor. It is not the dramatic hunger of one missed meal. It is older, steadier, and far more skilled. It has learned your schedule. Outside, the yard is damp from night rain, and the ground grips at each step. People move quietly between cabins, carrying pails, cloth bundles, and bits of wood. A rooster announces himself with heroic confidence, as though he personally invented the sunrise. Nobody thanks him. The day is already busy enough without poultry speeches. You smell salt meat somewhere nearby. The scent is sharp and fatty. It drifts from a pot where a small piece of pork seasons a larger amount of meal, beans, or greens. Salted pork is common on many plantations, along with cornmeal, molasses in some places, and whatever extra food people can grow, gather, trap, fish, or trade. Rations are not simply meals. They are instruments of control. The weekly ration day carries a special kind of tension. People may receive measured portions from a smokehouse, storehouse, or distribution point, depending on local practice. The amount can vary by age, labour role, season, and the enslaver's temperament. A heavy worker needs food enough to restore the body. Yet plantation accounting often sees bodies as expenses to be minimised. Such arithmetic is not kind. It rarely is. You join the small movement toward the ration place, where the smell of cured meat grows stronger. The smokehouse stands with its dark doorway and hanging hooks, rich with the scent of salt, fat, old smoke, and preservation. Inside, hams and sides of pork may hang for the household and plantation stores. Outside, people wait for portions that will be stretched with genius and frustration. Your hands are cold. Your stomach is louder. A man ahead of you shifts his weight, rubbing one palm over another. A woman beside him holds a cloth sack, her eyes fixed on the doorway. Children hover near adults, not exactly playing, not exactly still. Hunger teaches children to watch hands, baskets, pots, and faces. It makes them attentive in ways childhood should not require. The plantation storekeeper or manager measures cornmeal. The scoop makes a dry sliding sound. Meal falls into bags with a soft rush, pale and grainy. Salt pork is cut with a knife that thuds against wood. The portions look smaller in daylight. They always do. You accept what is given because refusal is not a meaningful option. Still, your mind begins measuring immediately, dividing the week into meals before the food has warmed your hands. Cornmeal can become ash cake, hoe cake, mush, dumplings, or bread cooked in a skillet. Salt pork can season a pot far larger than itself, which is useful, because the pork itself is often not large enough to behave generously. Gardens may offer sweet potatoes, turnips, collards, peas, onions, or herbs when seasons and permissions allow. In winter, every stored root becomes precious. Food is memory in solid form. It is planning too. You carry the ration back toward the cabin, passing a path that leads toward the main kitchen. There, the plantation household prepares for December visitors, or perhaps only for its own sense of importance. The air shifts as you near it. You catch the smell of coffee, butter, sugar, ham, fresh bread, and maybe dried fruit soaking for a cake. Your stomach notices. How thoughtful of it! The contrast is almost theatrical. In the big house, winter can become a season of stored abundance. Preserved peaches, smoked meats, pickles, preserves, pound cakes, pies, and puddings. Imported goods like coffee, tea, sugar, and spices mark wealth and connection to markets. In the quarters, every extra flavour may require effort outside assigned labour. The same plantation produces both hunger and plenty. That is its talent. You step into the cabin and place the ration where others can see it. The calculation begins without paper. How much meal for breakfast? How much for supper? Can a neighbour trade a handful of peas? Is there dried pepper left? Did anyone catch fish in a slough? Has the cold spoiled anything, or preserved it by accident? A woman pinches meal between her fingers, testing its texture. Her face reveals nothing. The skill of cooking under scarcity is not small. It requires timing, fire control, stretching, seasoning, sharing, and restraint. A little fat must flavour a pot. A little salt must carry through days. A child portion must be protected. A worker's strength must be considered. An elder's chewing may require softer food. Nobody calls this management. It is management. By mid-morning, the pot is set over the fire, water clouds as cornmeal thickens, stirred steadily to avoid scorching. The smell is plain, warm, and comforting because warmth is persuasive. A small strip of pork sizzles in a pan, releasing fat that glistens like treasure. You watch it too closely, then look away. There is dignity in not staring. There is also hunger outside the cabin. The plantation day continues. Wagons move. Mules complain through their noses. The wet yard churns under feet. But around the hearth, food briefly makes another kind of time. The spoon circles. Steam rises. Children lean closer, pretending not to be impatient. Adults pretend not to notice the pretending. In many enslaved communities, People supplemented rations through nighttime hunting, fishing, trapping, gardening, and informal exchange. Possums, rabbits, fish, wild greens, nuts, and berries could matter greatly. These activities required knowledge of land and season. They also required time, which the plantation always tried to steal first. Time is a hidden ingredient. Without it, even skill starves. A quirky winter tidbit lives in the ash near the hearth. Some cooks wrapped cornmeal dough in leaves or placed it directly against hot ashes to make ash cake. The name sounds like something invented by a person with very low branding ambitions. But the method works. Brush away the ash, crack the crust, and breakfast appears from almost nothing. Almost nothing is a recurring recipe here. You eat from a bowl while sitting near the door, where the air is cooler but the light is better. The mush is thick and warming. A little pork fat floats on top, shining faintly. You try to make each mouthful last. The body wants speed. The mind advises patience. The spoon becomes a small battlefield. Across the room, someone breaks a piece of bread for a child. The child eats silently. You hear the sound of chewing, the scrape of bowls, the fire's low pop. Outside, a blue jay screams from a bare branch with the dramatic force of an unpaid actor. The sound cuts through the yard. Someone mutters that even the birds are angry this winter. Gets a soft laugh, brief and useful. Laughter can season a thin meal. Not enough, but some. The plantation calendar bends strangely around Christmas. For enslavers, the holiday can bring feasts, visits, dances, hunting parties, church services, and displays of generosity. For enslaved people, it may bring a few days away from field labour in some places, small gifts, extra food, or permission to visit family. It can also bring forced cheer, surveillance, and the pain of separation sharpened by celebration. Historians still debate how Christmas varied across plantations, since memories from formerly enslaved people describe both rare relief and deep unease. Some recalled extra rations, whiskey, dances, and visiting. Others remembered holiday rituals used to reinforce obedience. The same season could hold tenderness and manipulation in the same cold hand. That mixture is difficult. It should be, as noon passes, talk turns toward possible holiday allowances. Maybe there will be a bit more meat, maybe molasses, maybe sweet potatoes from a pit, maybe flour, if the mistress wants to appear benevolent. The word benevolent sits badly in your mouth, like a fishbone. A gift taken from stolen labour is a complicated object. Still, food is food. People must eat. A young man mentions a hidden patch near the woods where someone planted turnips. The conversation becomes careful. Gardens are allowed in some places and restricted in others. What is permitted today can be forbidden tomorrow, depending on mood and management. Yet these small plots can sustain family life, personal pride, and a sense of claim over the earth. You imagine turnips under cold soil, pale and stubborn, a humble treasure. Someone else speaks of fishing lines set in a creek, baited despite the cold. Winter fishing requires numb fingers and patience sharp enough to cut. A catfish or perch can change an evening meal. A rabbit snared near brush can make a pot smell like fortune. Of course, the plantation prefers labour that profits the owner, not labour that feeds you. How inconvenient of your stomach. It continues anyway. The afternoon ration is measured into thought, not eaten yet. Meals must be spaced. The body may protest, but the week is long. You begin to feel hunger as a presence beside you. Not frantic, just persistent. It sits on the bench. It follows you outside. It whispers when you smell cooking from the big house. That smell grows richer as evening approaches. Butter and sugar warm in pans. The plantation kitchen, often separate from the main house because of heat and fire risk, is a world of intense labour. Enslaved cooks create elaborate meals that display the household status. Their skill is immense, yet credit flows upward to the table where guests praise hospitality. The hands that season, knead, roast, and stir may eat far less splendidly. You pass near enough to hear kitchen sounds. Knives strike boards, pots clatter, firewood shifts, voices call instructions. The air is thick with roasting meat, baking bread, and spice. For a moment, your senses betray you completely. The smell is beautiful. That is the annoying thing about injustice. It can smell like cinnamon while doing its work. You keep walking. You carry water back. The bucket handle cuts into your fingers, and the water sloshes cold against the rim. Near the cabin, someone has spread sweet potatoes near the hearth, checking for soft spots. Stored food can rot quietly, and winter damp is not gentle. Every spoiled piece feels like a personal insult from nature, which apparently has joined the management team. A meal forms slowly in the pot. Cornmeal thickens again, joined by greens and the flavour of pork. If there are dried beans, they have been soaked and coaxed towards softness. If there are peppers, they are used carefully. If someone has a little onion, the whole cabin benefits from the smell. It is amazing how quickly one onion can become community property. Steam fogs the cooler air. Your hands relax around the bowl. Evening food tastes different from morning food. It carries the day's exhaustion inside it. You eat while your muscles ache and your thoughts slow. The first heat spreads through your chest. Conversation loosens. Someone tells a small story about a possum so clever it deserved a church seat. Someone else says the possum would still be eaten if caught. That receives a better laugh. The possum sadly is absent. Food stories matter when food is scarce. People describe meals remembered from childhood, from other plantations, from African traditions carried through generations, from kitchens where skill transformed poor ingredients into something sustaining. Okra, rice, yams, greens, peppers, and methods of stewing and seasoning connect across histories shaped by forced migration and adaptation. Taste can carry ancestry when records do not. You listen as an elder speaks of grinding corn by hand. Her voice is low. She describes the rhythm, the dust, the ache in the shoulders, and the sweetness of fresh meal when it is cooked immediately. The children listen because the story is about food, which is always a reliable plot. You listen because the story is also about work that makes survival possible. Not heroic work, necessary work. Outside, the night grows colder. Inside, bowls empty. No one wastes scrapings. A spoon cleans the side of a pot with quiet precision. A child asks for more and receives a small addition, carefully judged. The adult who gives it takes less. The exchange happens quickly, without drama. Sacrifice often wears ordinary clothing. You feel the heaviness of a meal that is warm but not enough. The body's grateful. The body's not fooled. Winter hunger has many shapes. There is the hunger before eating, the hunger after eating too little, the hunger caused by smelling what others have, the hunger of children growing, the hunger of labourers spending more energy than rations replace, the hunger of people who must plan around someone else's power. The cabin grows quieter as the pot is cleaned. Ashes are stirred. A few bits are saved for morning, if saving is possible. The week stretches ahead in invisible portions. You begin to understand how hunger shapes personality, patience, humour, and memory. It can make small things luminous. A spoonful of molasses, a roasted sweet potato, a fish brought in cold hands, a crust shared without announcement. Such moments do not erase the system. They reveal the people inside it. Beyond the cabin, the big house windows glow again. You imagine tables laid with linen, candles, preserved fruit, meat, warm bread, and desserts rich enough to make a dentist sigh across time. Perhaps someone there speaks of Christian charity. Perhaps someone praises the plantation's order. People can say remarkable things while passing the butter. The thought is almost funny, almost. You sit near the hearth and feel hunger settle into something quieter. It will wake with you, walk with you, and wait beside you at work. But for now, the bowl has warmed your hands, and the room holds the smell of cooked corn, smoke, and shared endurance. Children drift toward sleep. Adults talk softly about weather, food, and the next chance to gather more. The firelight trembles over the stored ration. It looks both small and sacred. You close your eyes for a moment, listening to spoons being put away. In this winter world, survival is measured in handfuls, ladles, roots, scraps, favours, and knowledge passed from hand to hand. Hunger has not left the room. It has only stepped back from the fire, and still, you breathe in warmth, swallow what remains, and let the night gather gently around the fragile arithmetic of another meal. The yard is still dark when the day pulls you from uneasy sleep. You rise into air that feels wet, cold, and waiting. Frost has gathered along the cabin threshold, a thin white edge shining in the fire's last glow. Your clothes are stiff where dampness lingered overnight. When you lift them, they seem to resist, as if cloth has developed opinions. You put them on anyway. Nobody asked the shirt outside. The plantation has turned to mud under a pale crust of ice. Each step cracks lightly, then sinks. Cold water presses up around your shoes and finds every weak seam. The sensation is immediate and discouraging. Your feet are awake now, unfortunately, and they have several complaints. The morning horn carries through the darkness. It sounds flat and final. People emerge from cabins in slow shapes, wrapped in shawls, coats, sacks, and whatever warmth can be persuaded to stay on a body. Breath clouds the air. Someone ties cloth around their hands. Someone else tucks a child's hair beneath a worn cap before turning toward work. The sky is a low slate colour, giving no promise of sun. You join the line moving toward the fields. The path is a ribbon of churned earth. Mud sucks at every footfall, thick and greedy. It clings to shoes, ankles, hems, and tools. The smell rises strong and mineral, mixed with rotting stalks, mule dung, and wet wood. Mississippi mud is not merely dirt with water added. It is a personality, a deeply committed one. The fields lie stripped and raw, no longer white with cotton, but crowded with leftovers. Old stalks stand knee-high or taller, dry above and wet below. Burrs catch at clothing. Fallen bowls darken in the mud. Ditches run sluggishly, carrying brown water between rows. The plantation may appear asleep to a distant traveller, but the work has only changed costume. Winter labour begins with repair and preparation. There is always something broken. A fence leans where livestock pressed against it. A ditch is clogged with leaves and soil. A wagon road has collapsed into ruts. Brush must be cleared from a field edge. Cotton stalks must be cut, piled, burned, or ploughed under depending on practice and soil. Tools need handles, harness needs mending, barns need attention. The crop year is a circle with teeth. It never truly opens. You take up a hoe, its handle cold enough to bite through cloth. The metal edge is dull from repeated use, and the weight settles into your wrists. You're assigned to help clear a drainage ditch before more rain arrives. It sounds simple when spoken aloud, which is how unpleasant tasks often disguise themselves. You step into the ditch bank. Mud rises around your shoe. The first scoop is heavy with water, clay, dust, roots, and last season's decay. You lift and throw it aside. It lands with a wet slap. Your shoulders tense against the cold. Another scoop follows, then another. The rhythm starts before the body is ready, because the plantation does not wait for readiness. Around you, others work with hoes, shovels, axes, and baskets. A team of mules pulls a drag through rough ground, hooves sliding in the muck. Their breath steams in bursts. Chains clink. A driver speaks sharply to keep them moving. The animals are strong, but even they seem offended by the morning. You sympathize with the mule, quietly, of course. Winterfield labour is less famous than cotton picking, but it is central to plantation survival. Fields must drain properly, because standing water can damage soil and delay planting. Roads must remain passable for hauling cotton, wood, supplies, and people. Fences protect livestock and mark boundaries. Every neglected task becomes a problem when spring arrives. So you scrape the ditch clean. Your fingers stiffen around the handle. Cold mud splashes against your legs. It seeps through cloth and settles against skin. The sound of work fills the grey morning, metal slicing muck, wood creaking, hooves sucking free, water trickling, breath rasping. No single sound is loud. Together they become a tired music. An overseer rides nearby, wrapped in a coat better suited to the weather. His horse steps along firmer ground. He watches the pace, the line, the posture, the pauses. Winter work may be slower because bodies are cold, tools slip, and ground resists. Yet slowness can be treated as defiance by those paid to see defiance everywhere. That is convenient for them. Very convenient. You bend again before his gaze reaches you. Your back complains. The mud's weight makes each load feel larger than it appears. Your hands lose feeling, then regain it in pulses of pain. A small blister from earlier work opens beneath your thumb. Wet grit enters the raw place. You breathe through your teeth and keep moving. The body becomes a place where weather and labour argue. A woman nearby works with steady precision, clearing leaves from the watercourse. She hums under her breath. The tune is barely audible, but it holds a rhythm better than the overseer's voice. Another worker answers with a low line of song, not quite a performance, not quite conversation. Work songs can coordinate movement, mark time, express feeling, and create a shared pace. They also carry meanings that outsiders may miss entirely. Historians still argue whether some plantation work songs were primarily practical, spiritual, resistant, all of those at once. The question may be too tidy for something so alive. The song can help lift a log, hide a complaint, remember a homeland, soothe a child, and mock a fool without naming him. Efficient little thing. Music. The ditch begins to move. Water slips along its channel. It is satisfying in a small way, watching a blockage loosen and brown water find direction. The land has its own stubborn logic. If you do not cut a path for water, it will invent one, usually through something important. Mississippi soil is rich, but richness comes with moisture, and moisture demands management. The plantation depends on the enslaved knowledge of land as much as forced labour. That knowledge is rarely credited. You learn where clay holds water, where a ditch must deepen, where a bank will collapse, where roots will bind the soil. Such knowledge enters through soles, palms, eyes, and repetition. It is practical, embodied, local. A planter may write instructions in a ledger, but the ditch opens because hands know how to read mud. Late morning brings sleet instead of sunlight. Tiny pellets strike your hat and shoulders. They make a faint clicking on leaves and tool handles. The air sharpens. Your ears burn. Everyone bends lower into work, as if making smaller targets for the weather. The sleet does not last long, but it leaves a wet shine over the field, turning every wooden handle slick. A man loses his grip and the shovel twists hard. He curses softly under his breath. Not loudly, never theatrically, just enough to inform the shovel of its character. Someone nearby coughs a laugh, then buries it in a breath. Even in miserable weather, humour moves like a small animal through the rows, quick and hard to catch. The task changes near midday. You are sent to help haul wood. Firewood is winter's second crop, less glamorous than cotton, but possibly more beloved at night. Axes ring in a stand of trees beyond the field edge. The smell changes as you approach, from mud and rot to fresh-cut wood, sap, damp bark, and crushed leaves. The sound of an axe striking timber is clean and bright in the cold air. You lift split logs into a wagon. They are heavier than they look. Of course they are. Winter specializes in that joke. Bark scrapes your palms through thin cloth. Wet wood darkens your sleeves. The wagon bed thuds with each piece. Mules shift in harness, their hides steaming faintly. Someone stacks the logs tight because wasted space means more trips. Woodcutting has its own dangers. An axe can glance. A branch can fall. A foot can slip. Cold makes hands clumsy. and clumsy hands near sharp tools are not a philosophical problem. They are a medical one. But a plantation needs fuel for cabins, kitchens, smokehouses, laundries, and the big house fireplaces. Not all fires are equal. Some are supplied first. You notice which wood goes where. Better cuts may be directed toward the main house or kitchen. Smaller, greener, or poorer pieces may reach the quarters. Practices vary, but hierarchy has a way of entering even a wood pile. The stack itself becomes a map of power, which is impressive in the bleakest possible sense. A quirky tidbit lives among the ashes of these winter tasks. In some places, people saved certain hardwood ashes for making lye, which could be used in soap making. That means the burned remains of trees might help clean clothes, scrub pots, and continue the cycle of labour. Even ash did not get to retire around here. You carry an armful toward the wagon. Your chest presses against cold bark. The smell of oak and hickory clings to you. It is a better smell than ditch mud, though not lighter work. Your shoulders tremble slightly as you lift the logs up. A splinter enters your palm. You pull it out with your teeth and spit it away. Not because it is heroic, but because there is no ceremony for splinters. The sleet turns to mist. The road worsens. The wagon sinks near a rut, and everyone gathers to push. Mud grips the wheels with theatrical devotion. The driver urges the mules forward. Shoulders press against wet wood. Feet slide. Someone counts under their breath. On the third push, the wheel lurches free, splattering mud across legs and coats. The victory is small. It still counts. By afternoon, you're back near the fields, repairing a fence line. Split rails lie crooked where posts have loosened in the wet ground. Hogs, cattle, or wandering mules can ruin stored crops, gardens, and young growth. Fences are not decorative. They are boundaries against chaos. Although the whole plantation might want to avoid that word, you lift a rail with another worker. Its surface is slick and cold. Your hands coordinate without much speech. One raises, one steadies, one fits the end into place. The rail drops with a wooden knock. You move to the next. Repetition becomes calmer here than in the ditch. The body likes tasks it can understand, even when tired. Clouds lower until the afternoon feels like evening. A crow lands on the fence and watches. It tilts its head. Black eye shining. You briefly suspect it has come to supervise, which would be redundant. The crow flaps away before you can resent it properly. Behind you, the field stretches dim and brown, marked by rows, ditches, and the movement of labouring figures. Winter makes distance look longer. It makes time feel heavier. Your feet are now numb inside wet shoes. Walking feels oddly distant, as though your lower body has decided to leave negotiations to someone else. You flex your toes and feel little response. This is dangerous, but common enough to become background. The plantation asks people to treat warning signs as ordinary. That may be one of its cruelties. Pain becomes weather. Near the barn, tools are collected and checked. Metal edges are wiped, not lovingly, but because rust wastes value. Handles are inspected. Harness leather is hung. Cotton may still be stored, pressed, weighed, or prepared for transport. Wagons carrying bales toward river landings must travel roads made treacherous by cold rain. Cotton does not stop mattering because the field is bare. It follows everyone indoors. The great bales represent money, credit, debt, status, and ambition. Planters often borrow against crops, buy land, buy people, and expand production in cycles of risk. Weather can threaten profits, markets can shift. But in the daily life you inhabit, the result is simpler. More pressure descends onto people already tired. The overseer marks something in a book. You rub mud from your sleeve. A ledger can make the day look orderly. Number of rails repaired, ditch cleared, wood hauled, tools returned. It cannot record the cold water in your shoe or the splinter in your palm. It will not mention the way your stomach tightened at noon, or how the sleet sounded on dead leaves. Records have manners. They leave out suffering. As the workday fades, You carry one last load of wood toward the quarters. Smoke has begun rising from cabin chimneys, thin blue lines against the darkening air. The smell reaches you before the warmth does. It pulls you onward. Your arms ache under the weight. Your shoulders burn. Mud clings to your legs like a second set of trousers, poorly tailored. Children stand near the cabins, gathering chips and fallen twigs. Even small hands work. They pick through the ground for bits that can feed a fire. Nothing useful is ignored. A child holds up a crooked stick with triumph, then adds it to a pile. The gesture is practical, but also tender in its way. Everyone contributes to warmth. You set down the wood near the cabin wall. Your fingers release slowly. For a moment, you cannot straighten. The cold has settled into your muscles, and labour has nailed it there. Then someone opens the door and firelight spills across the threshold. The smell of smoke, cornmeal, and damp wool reaches you like a hand. You step inside, dragging mud with you. No one is surprised. There will be cleaning, drying, cooking, mending, and more tasks before sleep. Yet the worst of the outdoor cold loosens its grip. The fire pops as a fresh piece of wood catches. It is wood you helped haul, and that knowledge matters. Not because the system has become fair, since it absolutely has not. Because effort has become heat. You hold your hands toward the flames. Steam rises from your sleeves. The skin of your palms is rough, cut, and stained. Your shoulders pulse with fatigue. Outside, the ditch water moves in the dark. The fence stands a little straighter, and the woodpile waits for the long night. Winter labour has left its marks across the land and across your body. You breathe in smoke and sap. The room grows dimmer, and as mud dries slowly near the hearth, you understand that winter on this plantation is not a pause between harvest and planting. It is a hidden season of grinding work, where frozen fields, wet roads, broken fences, and stubborn ditches demand strength from people who have already given too much. The cough begins before sunrise, moving through the cabin like a secret. You hear it first from the corner near the wall, where cold air slips between the boards. A small child coughs once, then again, then tries to breathe quietly. The sound is dry at first, almost delicate. Then it deepens into something that makes the room pause. Nobody speaks for several seconds. The fire is only embers. You lie still beneath the thin covering, listening as another cough answers from across the room. Winter sickness does not arrive with trumpets. It settles in throats, lungs, joints, and bellies. It hides in damp bedding and wet shoes. It travels with shared cups, close sleeping, poor ventilation, hunger, exhaustion, and smoke. The cabin smells of ash, a damp cloth, and feverish skin. That smell is hard to forget. Someone rises to stir the hearth. A faint glow returns, red beneath grey ash. A woman bends over the child and touches the forehead with the back of her hand. The gesture is gentle, practiced, and full of information. She does not need a thermometer to understand heat. Her face tightens only slightly. The child says nothing. That is worrying. Illness on a plantation is never only private. It affects work, family, punishment, food, and fear. A sick person may be accused of laziness if symptoms are doubted. A truly severe sickness can threaten survival when medical care is limited, delayed, or controlled by the enslaver. The body becomes another place where power argues with reality. Outside, frost whitens the yard. Inside, breath sounds uneven. You sit up slowly, feeling your own throat rough from smoke. The chimney has drawn badly for days, and the damp wood never burns cleanly. Smoke hangs under the rafters, leaving eyes red and lungs irritated. In winter, people gather close to fires for warmth, but those fires can fill cabins with air that scratches every breath. A child coughs again. This time it rattles. The woman near the hearth pours water into a small pot and adds something wrapped in cloth. It may be herbs, bark, roots, or leaves gathered and dried for just such a morning. Enslaved communities held deep knowledge of plant remedies, some carried from African traditions, some learned from indigenous peoples, some adapted through hard experience in southern landscapes. Healing knowledge often lived in memory, hands, and observation. "You smell bitter herbs warming." The steam rises thinly. A mainstream fact sits heavily over the room. Enslaved people in the antebellum South faced high risks from respiratory diseases, intestinal illnesses, injuries, childbirth complications, and epidemics. Poor housing, inadequate clothing, contaminated water, exhausting labour, and limited nutrition made sickness more dangerous. Infants and young children were especially vulnerable because winter does not become gentle for small lungs. The child's mother lifts the cup carefully. The liquid is cooled before touching lips. You watch the child swallow a little grimace and lean back. The remedy smells earthy, sharp, and not especially friendly. Medicine rarely cares about charm. Someone murmurs that bitter things work hardest. It is the kind of saying that may or may not be medically sound, but it gives the room something to hold. Outside, the morning horn sounds. It does not care. The sound cuts through the cabin with brutal normality. Work is beginning, sick or not. Adults look toward the door, then toward the child. Choices narrow quickly here. Who can stay? Who must go? Who will speak to the driver or overseer? Who is trusted enough to tend the sick without drawing suspicion? Illness rearranges the day before it has properly begun. You step outside into cold air that stings your wet throat. The yard feels too bright. Frost shines on mud ridges, and smoke rises from cabins in pale blue columns. Other people emerge slowly, some coughing into sleeves, some moving with the stiff care of bodies not fully well. Winter illness is communal, because cabins are crowded, labour is shared, and rest is scarce. One cough rarely stays lonely for long. A man near the path rubs his chest. His breathing whistles faintly. He says he is able to work. Though his face suggests a different committee has reached another conclusion. The plantation prefers able bodies, so people learn to perform strength even when the body is slipping. A limp is hidden, a fever is denied, a cough is swallowed until swallowing fails. You walk toward the work area, and every breath feels cold in your lungs. The air tastes metallic. A thin mist hangs over the ground. It carries smells from the barn, the smokehouse, wet leaves, and stagnant water near the ditch. Bad water is another winter threat, though summer claims more fame for sickness. Wells, ponds, streams, and barrels can become contaminated. Cold weather does not make poor sanitation disappear. It merely changes the costume. Near the barn, a mule sneezes loudly. Several people glance over. The mule looks offended by its own body. A tiny smile passes through the group, because even misery enjoys a ridiculous sound. Then the overseer calls people into tasks, and faces settle back into caution. Humour retreats, but it has done its little work. You are sent to sort tools beneath a shed, which is almost mercy. Almost. The shed roof keeps off the frost, but wind slides under it freely. Wooden handles are stacked along the wall, iron heads laid out for repair. Your fingers ache as you lift them. Nearby. The coughing man works slowly, pretending not to lean against a post. His skin has a grey cast beneath the morning chill. You notice because everyone notices sickness. Noticing is protection. One person's fever can become a family crisis. If the sick cannot work, rations may suffer in some places. If the sick are forced to work, they may worsen. If a child loses a caretaker, others must absorb the care. If an elder weakens, knowledge and affection tremble with them. Plantation records might list illness as lost labour. The quarters understand it as danger. A woman comes from the direction of the big house carrying a small bottle. People watch without staring. It may contain laudanum, quinine, castor oil, turpentine, or some other 19th century remedy, depending on the complaint and the judgment of those in charge. Plantation medicine often mixed formal medical practice, household remedies, planter assumptions, and enslaved healers' knowledge. Some treatments helped, some did little, some were harmful, which is a very polite way of saying the past could be medically adventurous. You would prefer not to be experimented upon. A reasonable wish. Historians still debate how much medical care on plantations was driven by economic self-interest, fear of outbreaks, genuine concern, or the expertise of enslaved nurses and healers. The answer shifts by place and person. What remains clear is that enslaved people rarely controlled access to professional care. Even pain had to pass through someone else's authority. The wind presses harder under the shed. You cough once. It surprises you with its force. Your chest tightens, and your eyes water. The sound joins the others drifting around the yard. You taste smoke at the back of your throat. Perhaps it is nothing. Perhaps it is the beginning of several bad days. In winter, uncertainty itself feels cold. By midday, the sun appears, pale and thin. It warms almost nothing. You're sent with 2 others to carry water. The bucket handles bite into your palms, and the path to the well is slick. Near the well, the ground is churned and dark. Water sloshes, spills, freezes at the edges, and makes the earth treacherous. A fool with full buckets is embarrassing at best and injuring at worst. Naturally, the ground offers both options. A young woman draws water slowly, one hand pressed against her side. Her face is tight. She recently gave birth, someone whispers, though she's already moving through chores. Childbirth under slavery carries tremendous risk, especially with poor nutrition, repeated pregnancies, heavy labour, and limited medical control. New mothers may receive some rest depending on local custom, but plantation demand often presses early and hard. Babies too. Face winter with fragile bodies and very little margin. You carry the water back carefully. It feels heavier in cold weather. In the cabin yard, an older woman sits just inside a doorway, wrapped in cloth, grinding something in a small mortar. The sound is steady, stone against stone. She may be preparing a poultice, tea, or powder. People come to her quietly because she knows plants, symptoms, births, fevers, and the subtle language of faces. Her knowledge has authority. Not official authority. Better than that, perhaps. A quirky detail clings to such healing work. Some enslaved healers and southern folk practitioners used onion poultices, pine needle teas, bone set, sassafras, horehound, and other remedies for winter complaints. Some remedies had real effects. Some offered comfort, warmth, and hydration. Some mostly tasted like punishment in liquid form. Still, the act of care mattered powerfully. You smell pine and onion near the doorway. The combination is memorable. The sick child is inside, wrapped close, eyes half open. Steam from the cup curls near their face. The mother sits beside them, rubbing small circles across the back. The motion is steady enough to slow the room. A child's illness compresses every adult fear into one warm forehead. You kneel near the hearth for a moment. The floor is cold. The mother asks for more dry wood if any can be spared. Dry is a hopeful word. You bring pieces from the stack, choosing those least damp by weight and sound. When placed on the fire, one hisses like an angry cat, another catches. Flames climb slowly, then brighten. The child watches them with dull fascination. Outside, work continues without sympathy. Inside, time changes. Sickness makes minutes thick. Every breath is counted. Every swallow matters. A fever may break or rise. A cough may loosen or deepen. The room listens to the body as if listening might guide it. There is skill in this listening, and love, and the terrible humility of having too few tools. Afternoon brings news that another cabin has 2 people down with chills. Someone says it may be influenza. Someone else says it is just the cold settling in the chest. Names matter less than symptoms when remedies are limited. Fever, cough, weakness, pain, sweating, shivering. The body speaks plainly enough. The cause remains uncertain. Disease spreads through closeness, but closeness also saves. That is the hard contradiction. People share warmth, food, care, and sleeping space because isolation is impossible and abandonment unthinkable. A sick child is held, a coughing elder is covered, a weak worker receives a portion of food from someone who also needs it. These acts carry risk, yet they hold the community together. Near sunset, the plantation doctor arrives or is discussed as a possibility. That possibility carries its own unease. A doctor may bring useful knowledge, but also authority tied to the enslaver's property interests. 19th century medicine is uneven, shaped by training, theory, prejudice, and limited understanding of germs, bleeding, purging, dosing, and tonics may be used according to beliefs now unsettling. The sick person may not be asked what they want. You hear hoofbeats on the road, then they pass. No doctor stops here. The cabin returns to its own resources: fire, herbs, water, touch, prayer, and watchfulness. The child dozes. The coughing man from the shed has gone quiet in another cabin, which may be rest or worry. The air grows colder as daylight drains away. Smoke settles low again. You sit near the hearth, rubbing warmth into your hands. Your throat aches. Someone offers you a sip of hot tea so bitter it seems personally offended. You drink it anyway. Heat travels down your chest. And for a moment, breathing feels easier. The taste lingers with heroic determination. A child nearby makes a face at you, amused by your suffering, or you make a face back. It helps a little. Night folds over the quarters, and sickness becomes part of the dark. Coughs punctuate the spaces between cabins. Footsteps move from doorway to doorway. A woman carries a cup wrapped in cloth. A man brings extra kindling. Someone prays under their breath. Not loudly enough to be a performance, just enough for the room to hear. The scholarly uncertainty returns in the quiet spaces of memory. Accounts from formerly enslaved people describe both neglected suffering and remarkable healing networks. But historians continue to ask how much written plantation evidence hides or distorts everyday care. Planter records often preserve costs, treatments, and labour losses. They seldom preserve the exact tenderness of a hand cooling a fevered face. The fire casts long light across the room. The child breathes more evenly now. Not well, perhaps, but easier. Everyone notices without celebrating too soon. Hope is careful in rooms like this. It has learned not to run across the floor shouting. It sits near the hearth and waits. You listen to the winter sounds beyond the walls. Wind, coughing, a bucket set down, a mule shifting in the barn, the low murmur of someone singing to calm a restless baby. The plantation night is full of vulnerable bodies, each one expected to rise again when called. That expectation is cruel. The rising is astonishing. Your own cough returns, softer this time. You cover your mouth. The bitter tea warms your stomach, and the smoke stings your eyes. You lean closer to the fire, feeling its uneven heat on your face and the cold pressing against your back. Between those two forces, you understand how health here is never guaranteed. Never private, never separate from food, shelter, labour, and power. A final log settles, sending sparks up the chimney. The room glows briefly. The child sleeps. The mother remains awake. The older woman with the herbs nods in the corner, her hands still folded around knowledge no ledger can price. You sit quietly among them, wrapped in smoke, worry, and the fragile mercy of breath continuing through another cold night. The morning begins with a horse standing too still near the quarters. You notice it before the rider speaks. The animal's breath rises in slow white clouds, and its ears tilt toward every doorway. Beside it, the overseer sits wrapped in a heavy coat, watching people emerge into the grey cold. His face is unreadable, which is not the same as calm. The yard grows quiet around him. Quiet can be instructed. Winter changes the plantation's nervous system. Darkness comes early, roads turn difficult, and cabins hold people together for longer hours. The enslaver's household may fear theft, secret meetings, visiting without permission, or escape into the cold. The fear is not noble, naturally. It is the anxiety of people who built a world requiring constant control. You feel that control before breakfast. It stands in the yard. A driver moves from cabin to cabin, calling names and assigning tasks. His voice is lower than the overseer's, but no less serious. People answer quickly, because delay can be interpreted too creatively. A missing person, a late appearance, an unexplained bundle, or even a tired expression may become a question. On a plantation, questions are rarely harmless. The overseer's horse stamps once. Mud cracks under the hoof. You step into the line forming near the tool shed. The air smells of wet leather, cold ashes, and the sour trace of unwashed wool. Frost clings to fence rails. Somewhere behind the cabins, a baby cries, then is hushed softly. The sound makes the overseer glance toward the quarters, as if even grief should request permission. A rule is read aloud. Nobody asked for a reading. No visiting another plantation without a written pass. No leaving the quarters after the evening bell. No fire left untended. No gathering near the road. No taking tools without instruction. No speaking back. The list continues with the confidence of people who believe order is something they invented personally. You keep your face still. Your thoughts do not obey. Pass systems are a mainstream feature of slavery in many southern places. Enslaved people often needed written permission to travel beyond plantation boundaries, especially at night or between estates. Patrols and local laws reinforced these restrictions. Winter could sharpen enforcement because longer darkness gave people more hours beyond direct field supervision, at least in theory. In practice, surveillance stretches like wire. You feel it under everything. The overseer's rules are not only about movement, they are about reminding everyone that space itself belongs to someone else. A path, a road, a river landing, a church meeting, a neighbouring cabin, even a patch of woods can become forbidden ground. The plantation maps power onto ordinary places until walking becomes a political act. A woman near you shifts a bundle under her arm. The overseer notices. He asks what she carries. She answers that it is mending for the laundry. He tells her to open it. Cloth unfolds in the cold air, patched shirts and worn stockings spilling into view. Nothing forbidden appears. The moment ends, but the humiliation remains, thin and sharp as frost. He rides on. Everyone exhales quietly. Winter rules often claim to prevent disorder, but they create a constant theatre of suspicion. Enslaved people must anticipate how ordinary behaviour might look to a watcher. A hidden sweet potato could be called theft. A visit to a spouse on a nearby plantation could be called trespass. A song after dark could be called plotting. The imagination of power is exhausting. It never naps. You're assigned to work near the barn, repairing harness and sorting iron fittings. The task keeps you within sight of the yard. The smell of the barn is warmer than the open field, rich with hay, dung, animal breath, old leather, and damp wood. Mules shift in their stalls, wise enough to know humans are making the morning worse. Your fingers work leather through cold stiffness. The straps resist bending. Nearby, 2 men repair a wagon wheel under the shed. Their speech is careful, broken into harmless pieces when the overseer comes near. They discuss pegs, spokes, mud, and weather. Nothing more. The real conversation waits between words, patient and invisible. The ability to say nothing while saying something is a practiced art. A boy carries nails in a tin cup. They rattle softly. He's old enough to be useful and young enough to resent being noticed. The driver tells him to keep close and not wander. The boy nods with serious eyes. Children learn the boundaries early, not from maps, but from corrections, warnings, and the quick grip of an adult hand pulling them away from danger. Near midday, riders appear on the road. Patrollers. Their coats are dark against the pale fields, and their horses pick through the mud. Plantation patrols, and sometimes called slave patrols, operated in many southern communities to police enslaved people's movement, search cabins, enforce curfews, and suppress gatherings. Their exact form varied by state and county, but their purpose was clear enough. Freedom of movement was treated as a threat. The riders stop near the big house first. Of course they do. Authority likes refreshments as much as anyone. After a short time, they move toward the quarters, joined by the overseer. A cold tightness enters the yard. People working nearby slow only slightly, careful not to appear curious. The patrollers look over cabins, paths, wood piles, and doorways. Their presence changes the temperature more than the weather does. You smell tobacco as one passes close. His saddle creaks. One rider jokes about the cold making people stay put. Another says cold nights are good for running because dogs lose scent in hard weather. Whether he is right or simply pleased with his own menace is unclear. He laughs anyway, which answers a different question. You stare at the leather strap in your hands until the grain blurs. Escape in winter is both dangerous and tempting. Longer nights can help conceal movement. Cold can kill, water can rise, patrols can search roads, and dogs can follow trails. Yet some people still choose the risk because staying is another kind of danger. The Mississippi landscape offers woods, swamps, river routes, cane brakes, and neighboring communities, but it also offers exposure, hunger, and betrayal. Every possible path carries teeth. Historians still argue whether winter conditions discouraged escape overall or created specific opportunities for those with local knowledge. Evidence is uneven, because many successful movements left little written record. Notices for runaways show seasonal patterns, but notices also reflect what enslavers chose to report. Silence in the archive may hide courage, failure, or freedom. The patrollers approach the cabins. Work pauses by command. You stand at a distance while doors are opened and spaces examined. Bedding is lifted. Corners are checked. A bundle of rags is kicked aside. A child begins to cry, and an older girl pulls him against her skirt. The search is not frantic. Its calmness makes it worse. The cabin air spills out into the cold. Smoke follows it. One rider finds a small knife near a hearth and holds it up like a judge discovering civilization's downfall. It is explained as a cooking knife. He turns it in his hand, pretending to consider whether cooking is legal today. Eventually he drops it back on the table. This little performance has no useful purpose, except reminding everyone he can perform it. That is the purpose. Power enjoys props. After the riders move away, the room they search must be put back together. Bedding shaken, utensils recovered, ash swept, children soothed. The search leaves no official wound, but it disturbs everything. Privacy, already thin, has been made thinner. You return to the harness with a jaw you must remember to unclench. The afternoon task shifts to the tool house. Every item must be counted. Axes, hoes, wedges, files, chains, nails, rope, harness parts, and iron pieces are laid out and checked. The overseer marks a ledger, because ledgers make suspicion look intelligent. Missing tools may mean punishment, accusations, or more searches. Tools are useful objects, which makes them dangerous in the eyes of those who fear usefulness outside command. You hand over a file. Your palm smells of iron. Cold metal leaves a taste in the air, like blood without injury. The tool house is dim, with light entering through cracks in the open door. Dust lies on shelves, mixed with old grease and rust. Spiders have made careful homes in corners, apparently confident nobody will accuse them of conspiracy. A driver counts softly beside you. He does not meet your eyes. His role sits uneasily between the overseer and the quarters. Some drivers enforce plantation demands harshly, while others try to interpret orders in less destructive ways. Many were themselves enslaved, trapped in authority shaped by threat. The plantation creates these cruel arrangements, then pretends they reveal natural order. Very neat, very false. Outside, the patrol leaves at last. The yard loosens by inches. People resume movement, but not as before. Searchers leave an aftertaste. Voices stay low. Children are kept closer. A woman returns to her cabin doorway and stands there for a moment, looking at the disturbed inside. Then she lifts her chin and begins straightening what strangers touched. That act is small. It is also resistance. Resistance is not always dramatic. It can be hiding food, teaching a child a name, walking carefully to visit family, breaking a tool slowly, sharing news, preserving a song, feigning ignorance, or refusing to let humiliation define the room. The plantation sees some forms and misses others. Its eyesight is powerful, but not complete. Evening draws early and blue. The rules return with the bell. No leaving, no visiting, no singing too loud, no fire after a certain hour in some places, unless needed, which it always is. No gathering beyond what's allowed. The cold settles into paths, and the darkness seems to listen. You carry wood toward the cabin, aware of the overseer's horse somewhere beyond the yard. A small group gathers near a doorway. They separate as footsteps approach. The movement is practiced, almost graceful. One person lifts a bucket as if that was always the plan. Another bends to tie a shoe. A third calls to a child. Nothing to see here, sir. Just a remarkable festival of ordinary chores. The performance is quiet, and the watcher passes by. Inside the cabin, speech returns slowly. Not all at once. The fire is coaxed alive, and its glow closes the room from the outside world. People speak of the search, the patrollers, the knife, the insult, the foolish joke about cold. Anger moves carefully, but it moves. Someone imitates the rider's important face, and the room suppresses laughter until it shakes shoulders silently. It is dangerous to laugh loudly. It is necessary to laugh somehow. A meal is shared in low light. The sound of spoons against bowls feels calmer than the day deserves. Outside, the road is watched. Inside, memory is protected. A child asks why the men looked under the bedding. An adult answers that some people are afraid of what they cannot own. The child frowns, considering this rude design of the universe. You sit near the wall, feeling the draft touch your neck. The rule against travel weighs on the room. Someone's husband lives on a neighbouring plantation. Someone's mother is across a creek. Someone's daughter was hired out miles away. Winter's long nights might have allowed visits, comfort, news, touch, and reassurance. The pass system turns love into trespass. That is one of its quietest cruelties. A whispered plan forms near the hearth, soft enough to vanish if needed. Not an escape plan. A visiting plan? Someone knows when a patrol usually passes the lower road. Someone else knows a dry crossing near the cane. A third person knows which dog can be distracted with scraps. The plan is careful, local, and human. No grand speech accompanies it. Love rarely files paperwork. You listen without asking questions. Questions can be dangerous gifts. The fire pops, and sparks climb the chimney. The smell of smoke wraps the room again. But tonight it feels almost protective. The cabin is watched, searched, and vulnerable. Yet it is also a place where official rules lose some of their power. Inside, people repair dignity with jokes, plans, prayers, and knowledge. The overseer may count tools. He cannot count meanings. Night deepens outside. The cold presses at the cracks, and the road lies pale under frost. Somewhere, a horse shifts in a stable. Somewhere else, a patroller may be telling himself he has defended civilization by frightening children and inspecting blankets. The thought would be funny if it were not so ugly. You lower your voice with everyone else. The room leans inward. A story begins. Not about rules, but about a clever fox who tricks a watchful farmer. The children listen closely. Adults listen too, because animals in stories often understand politics better than officials do. The fox survives by timing, patience, and knowing every hole in the fence. Nobody says more than that. Nobody needs to. By the time the fire has settled into red embers, the yard outside is still. Yet stillness no longer feels simple. It holds watchers, boundaries, and risks. It also holds hidden paths, remembered kin, and the stubborn refusal to let every movement be owned. You lie down near the warmth, hearing breath gather around you. The rules remain outside. They remain inside too because fear travels easily. But beneath them runs another map, one made of trust, warnings, coded phrases, family roots, and small acts of defiance. Winter has lengthened the darkness, and power has answered with patrols. The community answers more quietly, with memory. The wind brushes the cabin wall. Someone banks the fire. You close your eyes as footsteps pass once along the yard and fade. The night does not become safe, it becomes known. And in that knowledge, under watchful cold and watchful men, you feel how survival depends not only on food and shelter, but on reading danger before it speaks. Firelight makes the cabin wall seem closer, as though the room is listening. You sit with others around the hearth while wind slides through the dark outside. The flames lean and recover, casting orange light over faces, bowls, hands, and hanging cloth. Smoke gathers in the rafters, then slips upward through the chimney with reluctant grace. The air smells of ash, damp wool, pine knots, and something herbal drying near the fire. It is a night for stories. Everyone knows this. Winter evenings give the quarters a strange kind of depth. Work has drained the body, cold has narrowed the world, and darkness has covered the fields. Yet inside the cabin, words begin moving where feet cannot. They travel across oceans, through forests, along rivers, and into places no overseer can sensibly inventory. A child leans against an older woman's knee. Her hand rests on his head. She begins not with an announcement, but with a question. Have you ever heard what happens when a rabbit laughs at the moon? The children shift closer. Adults pretend they are not interested, which fools absolutely nobody. The fire cracks once, approving the arrangement. Her voice is low and textured. It carries sleep and mischief. The story begins with a rabbit too clever for his own fur, a fox who believes himself important, and a night when the frost makes every footprint shine. The animals speak like neighbours, rivals, fools, and preachers. Their world is not separate from this one. It is this one, turned sideways so truth can move safely. Trickster tales are found across African American oral tradition, with roots in West African storytelling, indigenous encounters, European animal lore, and plantation life. Brer Rabbit, Anansi, and other clever figures survive because they know weakness can become strategy. They cannot overpower the stronger creature, so they outthink him. That is not merely entertainment, it is instruction wearing fur. The child smiles at the rabbit's first trick. The adults smile later. The older woman tells how the rabbit convinces the fox to guard a frozen pond all night, promising fish that never arrive. The fox waits, proud and freezing, while the rabbit slips home to warmth. Someone near the hearth makes a soft sound of satisfaction. No one says who the fox resembles. Good storytelling does not need a signed confession. The fire pops again. Timing is everything. Outside, a branch scratches against the wall with a dry tapping sound. The room does not startle, but the story pauses until the sound settles. Winter nights sharpen listening. Every noise may be weather, animal, visitor, patrol, or imagination. The boundary between practical caution and spiritual meaning is not always clear. You feel that boundary thinning in the smoke. The older woman lowers her voice. She says some nights, spirits walk closer than people think. They come with the cold, or with river fog, or with owls calling from the trees. A young man rolls his eyes gently, but not too boldly. Skepticism is welcome until the owl calls your name, and then everyone becomes very respectful. A few people laugh softly. The laughter is careful and warm. Belief in signs, spirits, dreams, and protective practices shaped many enslaved communities, though never in one single way. Christianity, African spiritual systems, herbal knowledge, charms, dreams, and folk traditions could live together in complex forms. A person might attend prayer meeting, wear a protective charm, read the weather through animal behaviour, and see no contradiction worth explaining to outsiders. The scholarly question remains delicate. Historians still debate how specific African beliefs survived, changed, or blended in different plantation regions, because records are fragmentary and often written by hostile observers. Oral memories preserve much, but they also reflect later experiences and retellings. The result is not a simple map. It is more like firelight on water. You listen as someone mentions a bluebottle tree. The image glows in your mind. In parts of the South, people placed blue glass bottles on branches near homes, believing they could trap wandering spirits or protect a place. The practice has debated origins and many interpretations, but the sight is striking. Glass catching light like little pieces of sky, even fear, apparently where you can be given a decorative assignment. A woman says her grandmother kept one near the door. Another nods slowly. The cabin door rattles in a gust, and every eye turns briefly. No blue bottles hang outside this doorway, only darkness and the pale yard beyond. Still, there are other protections. A worn Bible, a root tied in cloth, a whispered prayer, a horseshoe, a hidden mark scratched where visitors will not notice. Power watches bodies, but not every symbol. That is useful. Someone reaches toward a small bundle near the hearth and lifts it carefully. It contains dried roots and leaves tied with string. The smell is earthy, bitter, and faintly sweet. It may be medicine, protection, memory, or all three. Categories are tidy little boxes. Life rarely stays inside them. The young man asks whether it really works. The woman holding it looks at him. She says it works if you know what work means. It may not stop cold air entering a wall. It may not turn an overseer kind, which would be a miracle ambitious enough to need paperwork from heaven. But it can steady a frightened heart, remind a person they are not alone, and connect the living to the dead. That answer ends the debate. For now, the children want another story, preferably one with a creature punished for greed. Children have excellent taste in justice. A man near the door obliges with a tale about a greedy bear who steals winter honey and wakes every bee in the log. His voice deepens for the bear and squeaks absurdly for the bees. The room brightens with restrained laughter. The smell of supper lingers near the hearth. Smoke curls around the storyteller. Storytelling is not separate from hunger, cold, or fear. It helps manage them. It creates warmth that is not only physical, it gives children courage, teaches caution, mocks arrogance, and preserves memory. In communities denied formal schooling, written recognition, and legal family protection, oral tradition becomes a library carried in the body. You lean back against a folded sack. It scratches your shoulder. Outside, the wind changes direction. Smoke shifts, making eyes water. A child rubs his face, but refuses to move from the story circle. The bear in the tale runs from bees, trips over a stump, and lands in a creek so cold he promises to become a vegetarian. This is judged unlikely, since bears are not known for reliable vows. Someone adds that men are not either. That earns a quieter laugh. The conversation drifts from animals to weather signs. An elder says when smoke falls low instead of rising, rain is coming. Another says a ring around the moon means bad weather. Someone else says squirrels building nests high means a hard winter. A third says squirrels are poor landlords and should not be trusted with meteorology. Even jokes carry observation. The sky matters here. Weather lore blends careful attention with inherited belief. Without modern forecasts, people read pressure, wind, animal movement, clouds, smells, and the behaviour of fire. Such knowledge can determine whether to gather wood, protect stored food, prepare for flooding, or expect freezing rain. On a plantation, reading weather well is not quaint, it is survival. A girl asks whether dreams tell the weather too. No one answers quickly. Dreams are taken seriously by some, dismissed by others, and interpreted differently by many. A dream of muddy water may warn of trouble. A dream of a clear road may suggest travel. A dream of an absent mother may be grief speaking in pictures. The older woman says dreams are like strangers at the door. You listen before inviting them in. The room becomes still. That sentence stays. You think of all the people whose voices must travel through dreams because roads, sails, death, and distance have cut ordinary paths. The plantation can separate families, but sleep sometimes ignores geography. A mother may appear in a daughter's dream. A husband far away may arrive in memory with his hand still warm. Such dreams can comfort and wound at once. The fire settles lower, and someone adds a pine knot. Flame catches bright and resinous. The smell grows sharp, clean, and almost sweet. Pine knots burn hot and lively, throwing sparks like tiny stars. The children watch the sparks rise, their faces lit gold. One child asks if sparks become spirits when they vanish. The man by the door says only if they behave better than they did as sparks. This satisfies nobody. It still helps. A hymn begins softly from the far side of the room. Not the full force of Sunday singing, but a low thread under the talk. The words are familiar to some and half known to others. Christian worship among enslaved people could contain messages of endurance, deliverance, judgment, and hidden hope. Biblical stories of bondage and liberation carried particular power. Yet religion here is not one thing. It has many doors. Some prayer meetings are monitored by enslavers, especially when white preachers emphasize obedience. Other gatherings happen quietly, in brush arbors, cabins, woods, or night spaces where people shape faith in their own voices. Spiritual songs can express sorrow, longing, coded meanings, and community. They may sound gentle while carrying enormous weight. You feel the hymn in your chest more than your ears. It vibrates softly. The singer's voice has a rough edge from smoke and cold, but it steadies as others join. The room becomes less crowded somehow, expanded by sound. The walls remain thin, the roof remains poor, the night remains watched. Still, for a few minutes. The cabin contains a world larger than its measurements. A woman closes her eyes. Her lips move in prayer. You do not hear the words. Perhaps they are for healing. Perhaps for a loved one on another plantation. Perhaps for strength, patience, protection, or a tomorrow less sharp than today. Prayer, like song, can be both surrender and refusal. It admits pain without granting it the final word. The hymn fades, and the quiet after it is soft. Even the children respect it. Then, because human beings are wonderfully inconsistent, someone asks whether the ghost at the old gin house still walks. The room shifts again. Fear enters wearing Entertainment's coat. A young woman says she saw a light there once. A man says it was swamp gas. Another says swamp gas has become very well organised lately. The old gin house sits near a low stretch of ground. You know the place. People say a lantern appears there on wet nights, swinging where no hand holds it. Some claim it is a lost man searching for a road. Some say it is a warning to stay away from the rotten flooring. Some say it is nothing at all, which is exactly what a ghost would want skeptics to think. You smile despite yourself. The story works. Ghost tales can protect dangerous places by making children wary. They can speak of deaths not officially mourned. They can transform fear into something shared and manageable, in a world where violence and loss are often denied or minimized by those in power. Spirits may become unofficial witnesses. The dead, in stories, are harder to silence. The fire has burned down again. Red embers pulse beneath ash. Outside, the cold deepens, and the yard lies under frost. The cabin room smells of smoke, bodies, pine resin, and cooling food. A child finally falls asleep against an adult's lap, one hand still curled around the edge of a blanket. Stories have done their work. They have carried the child past fear into rest. You listen as the older woman speaks once more. Her voice is nearly a whisper. She says the living must remember the names they can, and speak kindly to those who came before, not because every spirit wanders, and not because every sign must be feared, because memory itself is shelter. A person with no recorded property, no legal marriage, and no protected family still has a place in someone's spoken name. The room receives this quietly. No one jokes. A coal breaks open in the hearth, exposing a brief orange heart. You feel warmth on your face and cold along your back. Around you sit people carrying histories across oceans, across plantations, across languages, partly lost and partly remade. The stories do not erase winter, they make it survivable. Outside, an owl calls from the trees. Nobody moves. The sound floats over the quarters, soft and hollow. Someone murmurs that the owl is only hunting. Someone else says that is what owls want you to think. The children sleep through it, protected by blankets, bodies, and tails of rabbits too clever to freeze. You pull the covering closer around your shoulders. The fire dims. In the low red light, the cabin becomes a vessel of signs, songs, prayers, jokes, remedies, and remembered names. The plantation may claim land, labour, tools, roads, and hours, but it cannot fully claim what travels by voice in the dark. So you sit very still, breathing smoke and listening, while winter presses against the walls and the old stories keep their quiet watch. Christmas morning arrives with frost on the fence rails and smoke lifting slowly from every cabin. You wake before the horn, which feels like a small miracle. The yard is still grey, and the cold holds its breath over the ground. Somewhere nearby, someone laughs softly, then hushes themselves from habit. The silence feels different today, not free exactly, but loosened by one notch. That notch matters. You sit up and listen. No work call has sounded yet. No shouted order has crossed the quarters. A few cabins already have fires burning brighter than usual, and the smell of food rises into the morning air. Cornmeal, pork fat, sweet potatoes, coffee from the big house, and wood smoke mingle beneath the pale sky. The plantation is pretending to celebrate. Everyone knows it. On many plantations, Christmas brought a temporary pause from field labour, though the length and meaning varied widely. Some enslaved people received extra rations, small gifts, passes to visit family, or permission for music and dancing. Others experienced the holiday as another performance controlled by enslavers, wrapped in forced cheer and watched carefully from the edges. You step outside, rubbing warmth into your arms. The ground crunches faintly. Children move through the yard with unusual brightness, even if their clothing remains thin and patched. A boy holds a small piece of molasses candy like it is royal treasure. A girl wears a ribbon faded almost beyond colour, tied carefully at her hair. Small gifts can shine painfully bright when ordinary life offers so few. A woman calls you toward a fire. Her voice is lighter today. Near the hearth, sweet potatoes roast in the ashes, their skins blackening and their centres turning soft. The smell is rich, earthy, and sweet. Someone has saved a little grease for the morning meal. Someone else has found dried apples or peaches, wrinkled and precious. The cabin feels crowded, but not only with bodies, it is crowded with anticipation. You take a hot sweet potato in your hands. It burns beautifully. You roll it from palm to palm until you can peel it. Steam rises from the orange flesh, carrying a sweetness that feels almost impossible in this cold. The first bite is soft enough to silence thought. Around you, people eat slowly, smiling with their eyes more than their mouths. Pleasure is allowed, but carefully. A holiday on a plantation is never simple. How could it be? The big house wants the day to prove something about generosity. The quarters know generosity would begin with freedom, not a larger piece of pork. Still, nobody refuses warmth, food, music, or a chance to see someone beloved. Survival often means accepting the useful thing without accepting the story attached to it. That is a subtle skill. You learn it quickly. By mid-morning, a distribution begins near the storehouse. People gather again, but the mood is stranger than ration day. There may be extra meat, cornmeal, tobacco, cloth, or a little sugar. Some enslavers used gifts to encourage obedience, loyalty, or a theatrical image of household harmony. They called it kindness. History should probably raise one eyebrow. The owner appears in a heavy coat. His boots remain clean. He speaks about Christian goodwill, the blessings of the season, and proper gratitude. His voice carries across the yard, polished and warm in the way expensive wood can be polished and warm. You stand with others, listening as cold air slides under your sleeves. The speech is not long, which may be its finest quality. Then the goods are handed out, hands reach carefully. A piece of meat, a measure of flour, a twist of tobacco, a strip of cloth. Each object is useful. Each object is also a reminder that necessity has been made dependent on someone else's mood. You receive your portion and feel two truths at once. Your body is glad, your spirit is not fooled. Children watch the exchange with sharp eyes. They understand more than adults hope. A small boy receives an orange from the big house kitchen, possibly his first of the season. He lifts it to his nose and inhales. Citrus cuts through smoke and mud like sunlight. The peel shines in his hand, bright as a little planet. For a moment, the entire yard seems to notice that orange. Tiny luxuries become events. There is a quirky custom on some plantations called Christmas gift, where people try to be first to shout the phrase and claim a small present. The practice appears in various southern memories, sometimes playful, sometimes awkwardly tied to hierarchy. Imagine a holiday game where timing matters, and the prize might be an apple, a coin, or bragging rights. Even joy had rules. Naturally, someone tries it near the kitchen yard. Christmas gift, they call. A cook laughs despite herself and tosses a biscuit toward the caller. It lands in the mud. Because comedy is committed to realism, the biscuit is rescued, brushed, judged acceptable, and eaten with great dignity. Several children immediately begin planning improved biscuit-catching strategies. The morning brightens, music starts somewhere near the quarters. A banjo, a fiddle if one is available, clapping hands, a homemade drum, or simply voices can summon movement into the cold. Music carries across the yard, quickening feet. A ring forms where the ground is firm enough. People dance with shoulders wrapped, breath steaming, shoes slipping slightly on frost-soft mud. You stand at the edge at first. Then rhythm finds you. The beat enters through your heels before your mind agrees. Hands clap in layers. Someone calls lines, and voices answer. The dance is not polished for visitors, though visitors may watch. It belongs to the people moving within it. Their bodies, so often commanded by labour, now make motion for pleasure, memory, and each other. That difference is enormous. You feel it in the air. The sound is warm, despite the weather. Skirts swing, feet stamp. A man spins with comic elegance and nearly loses balance, recovering with the solemn face of a church elder. This earns laughter so bright it startles birds from a tree. For a few minutes, cold and hunger retreat behind rhythm. Historians still argue whether plantation Christmas celebrations functioned more as relief, resistance, social control, or all three at once. Personal accounts vary because conditions varied, and because the same dance could hold multiple meanings. To an enslaver, it might prove contentment. To the dancers, it might reclaim the body for one precious hour. The fiddle bends a note. Your chest loosens. Near the big house, guests arrive in carriages, wrapped in wool and conversation. Their wheels leave deep tracks in the road. They bring news, gossip, perfumes, and the rustle of fabrics not meant for field mud. Laughter floats from the porch. The smell of roasting meat thickens around the kitchen buildings. The cooks are working hardest on the holiday. That fact sits plainly. Enslaved cooks, waiters, laundresses, stable hands, and house servants may have less rest during celebrations than field workers. Feasts require labour. Fires must be managed, dishes washed, animals tended, rooms warmed, guests served, linen handled, and spills cleaned. The holiday table glows because many hands remain busy behind it. You pass the kitchen yard and feel heat through the open doorway. It smells astonishing. Turkey or goose, ham, sauces, biscuits, cakes, puddings, spiced drinks, and coffee fill the air. A cook stands flushed from the fire, sleeves rolled, face shining with sweat despite the cold. She moves with authority among pots and pans. Her skill could humble any cookbook, though the guests may praise the mistress for the meal. History has many rude habits. That is one. A girl carries plates toward the dining room, walking carefully over the slick ground. The porcelain clinks with each step. Her hands are steady. Inside the main house, candles burn, silver shines, and conversation rises like smoke without the sting. People speak of family, markets, weather, church, and politics over food made by those denied family security, wages, and freedom. You turn away before bitterness becomes visible. The yard holds other work for you. A pass is discussed for visiting relatives on another plantation. This possibility changes everything for one woman near your cabin. Her husband lives several miles away, hired or sold there years ago. Christmas may be one of the few times she can try to see him. She folds food into cloth, checks the sky, and listens for news of patrols. Her face is calm. Her hands are not. The pass, if granted, is a fragile permission. It can be refused, shortened, questioned, or ignored by patrols. Still, she prepares. Another woman gives her a small piece of roasted sweet potato for the road. Someone else offers a strip of cloth to wrap her ears against the cold. Love travels best when packed carefully. By afternoon, the quarters are busier than any ordinary rest day. People visit between cabins. Old stories are repeated, but not lazily. Each telling lands differently because the holiday has open space for memory. Names of absent children, parents, spouses, and siblings move through the air. Some are nearby, some are far, some are gone beyond reach. Christmas sharpens both reunion and absence, like a bell heard through fog. A man sings a song with a smile that does not reach his eyes. You understand. Joy and grief sit side by side on the bench. Neither asks the other to leave. A child dances while an elder wipes tears quietly. Someone tells a joke to cover the moment, and the joke is welcomed as mercy. Human hearts are overcrowded rooms. They manage. The afternoon meal in the cabin is better than usual. Not grand, but better. There is a little more meat in the pot. Sweet potatoes, perhaps some flour bread, and a small sweetness passed carefully around. You taste molasses on your tongue, dark and deep. It clings there, stubborn and lovely. The cabin smells of cooked fat, smoke, warm roots, and wet clothing drying near the fire. People eat with visible pleasure. That pleasure matters. No system can make a warm meal meaningless. No injustice can stop sweetness from being sweet. Yet sweetness does not excuse injustice. The two facts stand together, uncomfortable but true. You hold them both as you take another bite and hear laughter rise from the doorway. Outside, a group begins another song. This one is slower. Voices blend, roughened by cold air and long labour. The words speak of travelling, home, crossing, and release. Perhaps the song is religious. Perhaps it is personal. Perhaps it is both, because the best songs often refuse tidy paperwork. The melody moves across the yard and into the dusk. The woman with the pass leaves near sunset. Her bundle rests against her side. She walks with another traveller until the lower road, then turns toward a line of trees. People watch without making the watching obvious. The sky above her is violet, and frost begins to gather again in the grass. She looks small against the road, but the purpose in her steps is large. You feel the cold return as music fades. Daylight drains quickly. Holiday permission narrows with the dark. The rules will tighten again soon, and everyone knows it. For that reason, the last minutes of open visiting stretch strangely. People say one more thing, sing one more verse, press one more hand, share one more bite. Time becomes a cloth everyone tries to hold before it is pulled away. Near the big house, the feast continues. Lamps glow gold. Guests sit in warmth, perhaps praising the season's peace. In the quarters, peace is not the word. Something better and sadder exists here. People making room for joy inside conditions designed to crush it. The music, food, visits, jokes, and prayers do not belong to the enslaver, even when he permits the day. Permission is not ownership. Not of the soul, night gathers fully, and the cold strengthens. The last dancers return to cabins, laughing softly as they stamp mud from their shoes. A child sleeps against someone's shoulder, one hand still sticky from molasses. The fire is fed with care. The holiday food is covered, saved, stretched toward a morning. You sit near the hearth, listening to the low after-sounds of celebration. A spoon clicks. A log settles. Someone hums the slow song again, barely above breath. The room feels tired, full, and tender. Grief moves quietly among the sleepers, but so does satisfaction. You think of the woman walking through the cold with her pass folded close. You think of the orange in the boy's hand. You think of the biscuit rescued from mud with heroic seriousness. These small things remain. They are not small to those who need them. The firelight warms your face as frost forms outside the door. The holiday has not made the plantation gentle. It has revealed, with almost painful clarity, how fiercely people can create meaning from scraps of time, food, song, and one another. You close your eyes as voices soften around you, and Christmas becomes not a simple celebration, but a fragile shelter built for one cold day from sweetness, sorrow, and stubborn life. Rain begins in the night with a steady sound, soft at first, then everywhere. You wake to it tapping the roof, running down the walls, and dripping into bowls placed on the floor. The cabin smells of wet ash, damp wool, cold clay, and crowded sleep. A child mutters in a dream. Someone rises to move a blanket away from a leak. Nobody speaks loudly. The rain is already speaking enough. By morning, the yard has become a dark mirror of puddles and churned earth. Water gathers in every hollow, shining under a low grey sky. Smoke from the chimneys hangs close to the ground, too heavy to rise cleanly. The air feels thick against your skin, chilly and swollen with more weather. You step outside and sink at once. Mud takes your shoe. It holds the heel with a rude little gulp, and you pull free with effort across the quarters. People move carefully, testing each step before giving it their full weight. A bucket slips from someone's hand and splashes brown water across a skirt. The person stares at it for one tired breath, then keeps going. This is Mississippi winter rain. It has commitment. The plantation road has nearly disappeared beneath wagon ruts filled with water. Each rut reflects the sky in broken strips. Mules stand near the barn with lowered heads, rain darkening their coats. Chickens huddle under a shed, looking personally betrayed by the entire climate. Even the dogs move with less confidence, sniffing the drowned paths. The river is not visible from every yard, but its presence is felt everywhere. The Mississippi River and its tributaries shape the land through rich soil. Flooding, backwater, fog, and sudden changes in travel. Plantations near river bottoms depend on levees, ditches, raised roads, and constant labour to manage water. Water is wealth and danger together. That is a difficult partnership. The morning orders come through rain. You're sent toward a low ditch near the road, where water is backing up against the bank. A group gathers with hose, shovels, baskets, and axes. The overseer rides only as far as the firmer path, which is wise of him and convenient, obviously. His horse refuses a deeper puddle with admirable moral clarity. You walk into the soaked field. Cold water enters your shoes. It is not a splash anymore. It is occupation. The ditch is clogged with leaves, broken stalks, mud, and branches carried by runoff. Water presses against the blockage, spreading sideways across the field edge. If it rises more, it may flood the road, soak stored supplies, or damage the soil prepared for planting. You dig where the bank softens under your feet. The mud slides back. Every shovelful feels heavier than the last. Rain runs from your hat brim into your eyes. Wet sleeves cling to your arms. The smell is rich and sour. Rotting vegetation, clay, wet leather, animal manure, and the green scent released when roots tear. Your hands ache around the tool, but cold rain keeps them from feeling fully yours. A branch must be pulled free from the ditch mouth. 3 people take hold. It resists like something alive. On the count, you pull together. Heels slide in, backs bend in. The branch shifts, then releases suddenly, sending brown water rushing through the gap. Everyone staggers. One person almost falls, catches themselves, and laughs once from pure relief, not amusement. The ditch begins to run faster. That sound is beautiful. Water moves with a low gurgle, carrying leaves and silt away from the road. For a moment, labour has changed the landscape visibly. The satisfaction is brief, because another blockage waits farther down. Still, the body notices accomplishment, even under coercion. Skilled work can produce a small spark of pride. You follow the ditch toward a lower stretch. Rain thickens again. Flooding is one of the great winter and spring threats in the Mississippi Valley. Before modern flood control, levees could fail, rivers could rise quickly, and backwater could spread through fields, roads, and settlements. Enslaved labour built and maintained many levees and drainage systems. The work was dangerous, muddy, exhausting, and absolutely essential to plantation wealth. The word essential does not mean valued. Not properly. A man beside you points to the ditch bank where water seeps through a weak place. If the bank gives way, the nearby path will wash out. You kneel in mud to pack clay and brush into the gap. Cold water pushes against your wrists. Your fingers press leaves, sticks, and earth into place, shaping a temporary plug with numb hands. The rain drums on your back. You smell river fog. It creeps from the low trees, pale and ghost-like, blurring fence lines and field edges. The whole plantation seems to dissolve at the distance. Sound becomes strange in fog. A shout travels without a body. Hooves seem nearer than they are. A wagon creaks somewhere unseen, complaining like an elderly chair with responsibilities. The road to the landing is nearly impassable. That worries everyone. Cotton bales, supplies, mail, visitors, doctors, and news may move along such roads toward river landings or towns. When roads turn to mud, the plantation becomes both trapped and exposed. Goods cannot leave easily. Help cannot arrive quickly. People attempting travel face cold water, broken bridges, and patrols alert to unusual movement. Near midday, you are ordered to help move stored feed from a shed floor. Water has entered the building. The shed smells of wet hay, grain dust, mould, and frightened animals nearby. Sacks must be lifted onto boards and barrels shifted away from the damp wool. Wet feed can spoil, and spoiled feed can sicken livestock. Livestock are valuable, which means their discomfort receives impressive attention. You lift a sack with another worker. It sags heavily. The weight presses into your shoulder, and wet burlap scratches your neck. You step carefully over slick boards. A chicken darts underfoot with reckless confidence. Someone curses softly, not at the chicken exactly, but at the concept of poultry. The sack lands on a raised plank with a dull thud. Outside, thunder rolls low across the fields. It sounds distant, but serious. A sudden gust drives rain sideways through the shed opening. Everyone turns away from it. The air smells of storm metal and soaked wood. You feel rain strike your cheek like thrown sand. Then the gust passes, leaving only the steady pour and the hiss of water running from roofs. A quirky storm custom surfaces as people work. Some old weather watchers say that if geese fly low before winter rain, the ground will stay wet for days. Others watch crawfish chimneys, ant mounds, and the angle of smoke to judge flooding. It is half folklore, half field science, and honestly more useful than a planter squinting at clouds from a porch. You would trust the geese first. They live here. The afternoon brings alarm from the river road. A small bridge over a drainage run has shifted, its planks loosened by rushing water. You go with a crew carrying poles, rope, axes, and boards. The path is slippery, bordered by cane and low trees dripping steadily. Water moves everywhere, over roots, around stones, through grass, into boot prints. The bridge is not grand. It is still important. 2 long supports hold rough planks over a swollen channel. Brown water races beneath, tugging at branches caught against the side. One plank has lifted, another is cracked. A wagon cannot cross safely until repairs are made. The overseer shouts instructions from the bank, where he remains charmingly dry compared with everyone else. You step onto the bridge carefully. The plank bends. Cold water roars beneath, not deep enough to be a river, but strong enough to knock a person down and carry them into trouble. Your hands grip the wet rail. Another worker hands you a board. Together you fit it across the gap while rain runs into your collar. A nail is driven with awkward strikes, hammer slipping in wet fingers. Each blow rings flat in the damp air. The bridge shudders. Someone wedges brush and logs away from the supports to ease pressure. The branch pile breaks suddenly, and water surges through with a louder rush. Everyone freezes, then returns to work. Fear moves through the group silently. It has no time to become dramatic. Historians still argue whether plantation flood management should be studied mainly as agricultural engineering, labour history, environmental history, or all of these together. The land was not a passive stage. Water-shaped work routines, settlement patterns, disease risks, markets, and survival. Every ditch and levee carried both human planning and human suffering. The storm makes that visible, very visible. As the light begins to fade, the rain finally weakens into mist. The fields are transformed, ditches shine like long dark ribbons, the road is torn and soft, fence posts lean in loosened soil. The air smells washed, but not clean, more like mud has been stirred into every breath. Frogs begin calling from flooded hollows, bold little musicians of inconvenience. You return toward the quarters with soaked clothing heavy on your body. Your shoes squelch. Each step releases cold water against your toes. Your shoulders ache from lifting sacks, boards, and tools. Mud coats your calves in the rough patches. The sky hangs low and purple, with clouds breaking only slightly in the west. A faint strip of gold appears there, almost insulting in its beauty. Near the cabins, people inspect damage. One roof leaks badly. A woman stands inside her doorway, holding a child away from the wet corner. Bedding has been moved to the driest place, which is not very dry. A pot catches a steady drip. Another cabin has water running beneath the sill, turning the floor cold and slick. People gather boards, rags, clay, and whatever can be used to block or lift. You help carry a pallet to higher ground. It smells of damp straw. The work of the storm continues inside. Wet clothes must be hung near fires. Shoes must be dried without cracking. Food must be protected from moisture. Children must be kept warm. Firewood must be checked, because wet wood can make a cabin smoky enough to punish everyone with lungs. The fire resists at first. Then it catches. Steam rises from clothing hung overhead, filling the room with the smell of wool, smoke, mud, and human fatigue. The floor is gritty with tracked-in dirt. A child tries to step around the mud and steps directly into another patch, proving that architecture has failed them. Someone sighs, then laughs because the alternative is too heavy. Supper is late. The storm delayed everything. A pot is finally warmed, and the steam feels like blessing. You eat with wet hair, aching hands, and feet still not dry. The food tastes smoky from damp wood, but nobody complains. Outside, frogs call louder, as if the entire flooded world now belongs to them. Perhaps tonight. It does. Conversation turns to the river. How high is it? Will the road wash out? Will the low pasture flood? Will the smokehouse stay dry? Has anyone heard from relatives across the creek? Water separates people quickly. A distance walked easily in dry weather becomes dangerous when streams rise and roads disappear. A family visit, a doctor's call, a message, a burial, a birth. All can be blocked by water. The plantation may command bodies. The river ignores commands. That thought brings a strange satisfaction. The river is no liberator by itself, and it can hurt the vulnerable first. Still, it humbles the grand plans of men who believe land is conquered once surveyed. Water remembers its own roots. It returns, seeps, floods, and rearranges. It has no respect for property lines. Night settles over a soaked plantation. Every sound is water, drips from eaves, runoff in ditches, soft sucking mud, frogs in flooded grass, a distant rush from the swollen channel. Inside the cabin, the fire crackles unevenly, fighting damp wood. Smoke leans low, then rises. People shift, bedding away from leaks, and place children nearest the warmth. You lie down, listening to the storm's aftermath. Your blanket feels clammy. Still, the cabin holds. The fire holds. The ditch runs. The bridge stands for now. Survival tonight depends on repairs made in cold rain by hands that will not appear in any proud account of plantation prosperity. The land has been defended from water, not by wealth, but by labour soaked to the bone. Your eyelids grow heavy as frogs sing beyond the walls. The air smells of wet earth. You understand now that winter danger does not always arrive as frost. Sometimes it comes as a rain without end, as roads dissolving, as rivers rising in the dark, as roofs dripping onto sleeping children. The plantation is built on rich bottomland. But richness has a price, and water collects it patiently. The fire dims to embers. Another drip lands in the bowl. You close your eyes while the swollen night breathes around you, and the soaked fields lie quiet under a fog, waiting to see whether the river will stay in its bed. The first sign of spring is not warmth, but a different smell in the mud. You notice it one grey morning while carrying wood past the cabin door. The air is still cold enough to sting your fingers, yet something underneath has shifted. Wet earth smells greener now, less dead, less sealed away. Along the fence, tiny shoots push through flattened grass with unreasonable confidence. The world is not kind yet. It is only changing. Mist hangs over the fields, pale and low, softening the rows of old stalks and the dark lines of ditches. Water still gleams in the ruts. Frost still appears some mornings, silvering roofs and rails before sunrise. But the cold has lost a little of its authority. It argues rather than commands. You breathe more deeply than usual. Your chest still remembers smoke. Around the quarters, people move with the cautious hope of those who have known winter too closely. Blankets are shaken in weak sunlight. Damp clothing is hung outside when the weather allows. Children chase each other near the woodpile, then stop to warm their hands over a small fire. Their laughter sounds strange at first, like a bird returning before you trust the season. The cabins look tired in daylight. So do the people. Winter leaves marks that do not vanish when the air softens. Coughs linger. Feet ache. Hands remain cracked. Stored food has thinned. Roof leaks need repairing. Fences need lifting. And roads need rebuilding where rain has torn them open. Spring does not arrive as mercy alone. It arrives with a list. That list is long, very long. The plantation now turns its face toward planting. Fields must be ploughed, beds shaped, seed readied, livestock managed, and tools repaired. Cotton culture follows a demanding calendar, with winter maintenance giving way to spring preparation. In Mississippi's plantation regions, cotton planting often began when soil warmed enough, though timing varied by weather, location, and labour arrangements. You stand near a field edge and watch mules being hitched. Their harness rings softly, the smell of wet leather, animal breath, and turned soil fills the morning. A plough cuts into the earth, lifting dark ribbons that shine briefly before settling. The soil is rich, heavy, and stubborn. It clings to the blade, then breaks apart under pressure. Each furrow looks like the beginning of something, which is dangerous because beginnings here are not innocent. Cotton will come again. Everyone knows it. The winter did not defeat the plantation's appetite. It merely slowed and rearranged it. Now the appetite wakes, stretching across acres, ledgers, debts, markets, and bodies. The same land that froze your feet and flooded your path will soon demand planting, hoeing, thinning, and months of labour under hotter skies. You feel the future in your shoulders. It is already heavy. A group is sent to clear remaining stalks and burn brush along the field margins. Smoke rises in thin columns, smelling of old cotton stems, dry weeds, and damp leaves. Flames catch slowly because the ground remains wet. You feed the fire with armfuls of debris, watching orange tongues work through brown tangles. Heat licks your face while cold air touches your back. That is spring in between seasons, half promise to half trick. Nearby, an older man studies the soil between his fingers. He rubs it, smells it, and lets it fall. He says it is still too wet in the lower field. A younger worker nods, though no planter is near enough to hear. Knowledge passes quietly, without ceremony. The land has been watched by people whose names may never enter agricultural reports. Historians still debate how much planter success depended on enslaved agricultural expertise, rather than written advice from agricultural reformers. The answer seems obvious from the field, but records often flatter the people holding pens. Soil knowledge, animal handling, planting judgment, and weather reading lived strongly among those forced to do the work. The pen took credit. The hands knew better. A quirky sign of the season appears near the ditch bank. Frogs' eggs floating in a shallow pool, clear and speckled like beads. Children gather around them in fascination, while adults warn them not to stir the water too much. Some people read the frogs as a sign that deeper cold has nearly passed. The frogs, having declined all interviews, remain mysterious. Still, their chorus grows each night. It sounds like wet little bells. In the kitchen gardens near the quarters, if permitted and protected, people begin coaxing life from small plots. A patch may hold onions, greens, peas, herbs, or sweet potato slips later in the season. These gardens matter beyond calories. They offer skill, flavour, memory, and some small claim over time and soil. You kneel beside a narrow bed and press seeds into damp earth. The soil is cold. It packs beneath your fingernails. The smell rises clean and intimate. A woman beside you shows a child how deep to place each seed, not too shallow and not too deep. The child listens with fierce seriousness. This lesson is not written down. It is planted directly into memory. A rooster struts past the garden with ridiculous authority. Nobody elected him. He scratches at the edge until someone shoos him away. He retreats offended, then returns the instant backs are turned. Even in hardship, ordinary annoyances persist. That can be strangely comforting. A world with rude chickens still contains some recognizable nonsense. By midday, the sun breaks through the clouds. Weak warmth touches your face. People pause in its light, not long enough to be called idle, but long enough for the body to notice. Sun after winter feels almost suspicious. You stretch your fingers and feel stiffness slowly release. A child turns their face upward with eyes closed, like a small sunflower in patched clothing. A plantation house glows in the same sun. That seems unfair, but typical. Preparations there also change with the season. Windows are opened. Carpets may be beaten. Storerooms checked. Visitors planned. Horses groomed. New accounts considered. Spring carries social rituals for enslavers. But for enslaved people, it brings another tightening of the agricultural year. The calendar may look bright from a porch. From the field, it looks like work wearing fresh colours. You carry a basket of repaired tools toward the shed. Metal knocks softly inside. Hose have been sharpened, handles refitted, wedges sorted, ropes checked. These objects will soon become extensions of sore hands. The shed smells of oil, rust, and old wood. Light enters through cracks in thin beams. Dust floats in the air, glittering briefly where sun finds it. The beauty is real. So is the trap. A woman hums while mending a child's garment outside her cabin. The cloth is faded and patched in 3 places. Spring may mean less need for heavy coverings, but it does not mean plenty. Garments must last. Shoes must be stretched through another season. Blankets must be dried, folded, and guarded against damp, insect, and wear. Every object has a second life, sometimes a third. You help repair a cabin wall where winter rain widened a gap. Clay, moss, scraps, and patient hands close the opening. The wall will never become elegant, but it may stop a draft. Fingers press the mixture into seams, smoothing edges with wet palms. The work smells of earth and wood smoke. A child asks if the wall is healed now. Someone says almost. That word fits many things here. Almost warm, almost dry, almost enough, almost safe, almost rested. The language of plantation survival is full of near things, close things, partial things. People become experts in making almost serve until something better can be found. Afternoon deepens and a breeze moves across the field. It carries a softer scent. You smell budding trees, wet grass, manure, smoke, and the faint sweetness of early blossoms near the edge of the woods. Bees move slowly around a patch of tiny flowers, as though testing whether the world has become worth the trouble. Their low hum joins the distant creak of a wagon and the steady call of a crow. The body wants to believe in relief. The mind is careful. You know spring will not end suffering. It will open the door to another cycle of forced labour. Planting, chopping, hoeing, picking, hauling, processing, and punishment will follow in their time. Yet the end of winter still matters. Fewer frozen mornings. Drier bedding. Sometimes more greens. Longer light. A better chance for children to play outside. Less smoke swallowed through long nights. Mercy can be partial. It is still felt. Toward evening, people gather near the cabins as the sky clears into a pale gold. Someone has found early greens, bitter but welcome. A pot simmers with their scent, sharp and fresh under the smoke. The meal is simple, yet the taste of green after winter feels like news from a kinder country. You eat slowly near the doorway. The air is cool, not cruel. A baby sleeps in someone's lap, cheeks round in firelight. An elder rubs oil into cracked hands. A young man repairs a fishing line, hoping the swollen creeks will offer something useful. A woman sorts seeds wrapped in cloth, naming each kind softly. The room is still poor, still watched, still vulnerable. It is also alive with preparation. That is not a small thing. It never was. Night comes later now. The last light clings to the horizon, and the frogs begin their chorus from the wet low ground. The sound rises and falls, uneven and persistent. It fills the dark spaces where winter wind once seemed to own everything. You stand outside for a moment, letting the cool air touch your face. Stars appear one by one. They look nearer tonight. The cabins breathe smoke into the spring night. The fields wait, dark and ready, already claimed by plans not made for your freedom. Still, beneath that grim truth, you feel the endurance of those around you, not as a grand statue or polished legend, but as daily motion, cooking, mending, planting, singing, healing, laughing when possible, remembering when necessary. Survival here has never been simple. It has always been work. You step back inside and sit near the low fire. The season has turned, but the story of the plantation has not softened into romance. Winter has shown its damp walls, thin blankets, hunger, illness, rules, beliefs, songs, storms, and stubborn lives. Spring now shows another truth. People who were denied freedom still made worlds of care within the narrow spaces left to them. The fire lowers to a calm glow. Outside, the frogs keep singing, patient and unembarrassed, as if the whole earth is slowly breathing again. You let your hands rest open on your knees. The ache is still there, but quieter. The cold is not gone, but it has stepped back from the doorway. So let the night soften now. Let the fields fade into shadow. Let the smoke rise gently from the chimney and loosen into the dark. The road is quiet, silvered by faint moonlight, and the wet earth releases its green breath beneath the stars. Somewhere beyond the cabins, water moves slowly through the ditches, no longer rushing, only murmuring to itself. You feel the room settling around you. A blanket is drawn higher over a sleeping child. A log shifts and gives one last small sigh of flame. Voices lower until they become only breath, only warmth, only the soft proof that people remain together through the hardest season. The plantation still waits outside, with its fields and rules and heavy demands. But here, in this dim circle of ember light, the night asks for nothing more from you. Not yet. The air grows softer, and your shoulders loosen. The smell of smoke, greens, damp earth, and cooling ash gathers into something almost peaceful. You breathe in. You breathe out. The winter road recedes behind your closed eyes. The river fog thins. The cold fields grow distant. What remains is the slow pulse of the fire, the quiet chorus of frogs, and the tender darkness folding itself over the cabin like a final, careful covering. Rest now, gently. The season has turned. End of script. Sleep well.